Hi, hello, and welcome inside our Sports Business Classroom studios in Costa Mesa, California. My name is Beau Estes. I'm the director of the Media and Broadcasting program at Sports Business Classroom, and I'm joined by Eric Pincus, one of our instructors at Sports Business Classroom, as well as Dan Purcell, who heads up the scouting department at Sports Business Classroom. We're getting you ready for the 2023 NBA draft, and we're doing it a little bit different here. We're going to have a draft watch party that is going to be powered by our student scouts. These are students who have come through the program. They have done scouting work all year long, led by these two, and they're going to be providing you all the analysis that they've culled together. So we will see these students momentarily, but before we get started with all of that, Eric, Dan, we're at the outset of another big draft. I know the lead story on everybody's mind. Eric, first of all, for you, what are you watching going into tonight?
Well, first of all, at this point, I feel like we should need to call them just scouts instead of students because they've been operating as scouts. They're no longer students. They have graduated from our program. They're killing it. And I know so much about this draft, but it is really not my forte. I'm more of the why are teams doing what they're doing and that sort of thing. And I think the focus shifts immediately from my point of view to Portland and what they do at 3. That's the question for me because everyone knows Wembanyama's going 1. We'll see whatever happens with the players at 2 and 3. And I leave that up to this gentleman here who knows way more than I would ever on this sort of thing. But Portland wants to not trade Damian Lillard, right? Like trading Damian Lillard is the last thing they would like to do. So can they find a way to give him a reason to stay? He wants to stay. He needs a reason to stay, and that's what I'm looking at. Dan, what about the players?
It's going to be a fun draft tonight, isn't it? It's one of those. It's one of those nights that, since you already touched on Portland, after we get through with Portland, there is a clump of prospects between about 4 and 10. You could even say 4 and 11. That are really, it's really going to be interesting to see which teams value those guys moving forward. And when it comes to Portland, the draft starts there. From everything that we're hearing is Brandon Miller is going to Charlotte, and that means for us that the real draft starts at 3. And as Eric was saying, if Portland is committed to Damian Lillard, that means that this pick has a high probability of being on the move. And the next question is, where does that go? Is that maybe Orlando wants to make a splash? Is it another team like New Orleans who maybe is going to be able to make a move up? Those teams may want to make a splash for a guy who was considered at some point, in the past 12 months, the number 1 pick in this draft at some point. Now, obviously, Victor Wembanyama has, obviously taken that throne, but a guy who in a lot of other drafts might be considered number 1.
There are 3 guys in this draft that could have gone number 1 in other drafts. Well, 2 guys, frankly, Miller and Scoot Henderson. But Victor Wembanyama, let's talk about the foregone conclusion for just a moment. And if we can bring up one of our student scouts who is, scouts, right?
Yeah, let's just call
Why
them
am I calling them students anymore? It's Max Rosenberg, if we can pop him up. Max, I know that you've spent a lot of time looking at Wembanyama clips. And just so you know, Max, last summer I was in a room and watched Dan Purcell's eyes pop out of his head watching Victor Wembanyama. What have you seen that has impressed you? And is there anything that we should be looking at as an area for development with Victor Wembanyama?
Yeah, of course. I mean, we were probably friends of the room when Dan did that. With Victor, versatility across the both offensively and defensively. He is a matchup nightmare.
Hold up. We had a little echo there.
Yeah. You were shouting from a mountaintop, and I understand because he's a good prospect. So no, I think that, I guess, Dan, if you could walk me through, while we get Max's mic situation cleared up, walk me through what you saw when we were in that room last year that made you think he's so special.
Yeah, that's something that I wanted to really show the room was it's not a matter of what does he do well. You really have to find out what he doesn't do well, right? What doesn't he do on the floor? What doesn't he impact, whether that's defensively or offensively? Some may take part in saying he's not the greatest three-point shooter ever, but you know what? I think he's going to be able to work on that. That stroke's really good. We just haven't seen 7'5", can take 2 dribbles to the baseline, get to the Kobe shot, and fade with a guy in his body. We just haven't seen that. And it's unbelievable to see the type of talent that he will bring to this league. It's an unbelievable prospect.
Well, I'm old enough to remember Ralph Sampson, and that's the closest thing size-wise, body-wise that I can remember. Not the same player, though. Not the same skill set. Max, I want to see if Max's mic's okay and if he's ready. Just to continue your thoughts on what you're liking with Wembanyama.
Hey, guys. A little better, hopefully.
Much better.
Yeah, I mean, he can take the ball right off, and the guys that break, Ralph Sampson, guy that some abilities. We haven't seen a big band that can't do that in a long time. He has pretty concise room motion. First teammates up to 5. See over just that and repeatable shot motion, very fluid mechanically, and like mentioning, 3-point shooting wise, we took a little dip season. However, it was something that leveling seeing a little bit more within the offense. San Antonio will be able to pick and choose his spots over the year.
So, building off what Max said, Eric, I want to talk to you about where San Antonio is and how you go about building a team around this guy with their particular present situation. What do they look? I mean, it's a great thing to land in your lap, but how do they go forward from here?
Well, they have Vassell. Right, Devin Vassell. They have Keldon Johnson. Mm-hmm. Was it Trey Jones? He's a restricted free agent. Bring him back. It's basically an empty canvas of cap space, and what do they want to put around Wembanyama? Obviously, you're going to need guards who can shoot, space the floor for him. You're probably going to need a veteran big, and I don't think it's going to be Steven Adams, but I think it could be that archetype of like a legit 7 foot, 6'10", strong,
sort of an enforcer type.
Just to not say because guys who are that big, there's at least a risk of injury. You want to make sure that you're not asking him to do too much physically until his body develops, because he's relatively young, right? And he's tall. He's got to grow into what he's going to be as a full-fledged NBA adult, and that will happen. But you don't want to put it on them too much. So, they have more cap room than anybody in the league. So it's a question of what are the vets and how quickly do you push the chips in to get better, because you don't want to go too fast. And, the Mavericks have struggled where they were going to the rebuild and then they got Luka, and then it's like, wow, this guy's way better than we thought. We need to start increasing our timeline, and that can be a very challenging time for a team.
And those are the thought processes that are going on in the San Antonio Spurs organization right now. How quickly do we want to go?
Right.
What do we expect right away? Right?
And you definitely need to get good players around him, because the tanking, they may say, oh, we didn't tank or whatever. But like trying to be a bad team to get the top pick, now you have him. Those are usually not the best developmental situations, but at the same time, you don't want to be like, oh, we got to win, or try to put that pressure on Victor to be suddenly carrying the team to the playoffs. And so I've talked to different teams and people, and they're like, oh yeah, the Spurs are going to be at least a play-in team. And I'm like, don't put that much on it. Like let it happen. Was LeBron in the playoffs as a rookie? He turned, you want him to have a career that's the right career. And I would say that of the franchises to get him, San Antonio is a good place for him.
He seemed pretty happy.
He'll have the support he needs to bloom into what he's supposed to be there. Who knows what the future holds. But that's a good place for him to start.
So we've done what we're supposed to do. We've talked about the foregone conclusion that is Victor Wembanyama, and now we move on to that 2-3 area that has been sort of a back and forth between Brandon Miller and Scoot Henderson. And I guess, Dan, if you could dive into those two prospects, I know where you think it's going, but what is the value and what are the positives in each of those prospects?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Brandon Miller's game. I think in this NBA, I think he's the prototype of a higher ceiling 3-and-D wing, right? he can do a lot of things. He can be your main. He can carry the load offensively, defensively. He's able to at least hold his own. I'm not saying he's Paul George and he's a stopper, but he's somewhere in that Danny Granger, Paul George mix of those two guys, in my opinion. And then with Scoot, I see a lot of Russell Westbrook in him. Okay. And the thing about Scoot is I've voiced this before on a couple other writing and on a couple other podcasts. The thing with Scoot is he's such an explosive athlete, and it's where does he fit in when it comes to winning at the highest level? Is his game going to translate to winning championships?
Yeah, it's a question, I guess, these teams are asking themselves now, and, we've got scouts, like we mentioned, covering all of these players. It's Gabriel Mendez, I believe, has Scoot Henderson, and if we could pop him up, let us know what you're seeing and what is, in looking at all this film, what's the upside here and what's the value here?
Got it. So Scoot Henderson is an point guard. Who typically, unlike the player, actually has a very nice mid-range game. He does a good job leveraging his athleticism to get to his spots on the floor, whether that be at the rim, where he's a very powerful finisher. He's right around 6'3", but he has a 6'9" wingspan, strong build on him. So again, he's able to leverage that athleticism to get to his spots on the floor. Quality mid-range shooter as well. And this season with Ignite, we saw him really take a step forward as a playmaker, where he did a good job threading needles to his big men, whether that be them rolling after setting him a ball screen, or whether that be finding them at the dunker spot. So a growing playmaker, a nice shot maker, and a guy who can get to the rim at will. In my opinion, he has clear All-NBA upside. A little bit on the low tier, just because I don't think there's necessarily that clear dominant trait or dominant skills part of his game that is right there at this exact moment. But when you take a look at his athleticism, his shot making at the rim and from mid-range, and his growing playmaking, I see a low tier All-NBA guard in Scoot Henderson. And for me, at that second pick, I think he would be my clear pick, just given his upside compared to a player like Brandon Miller. But yeah, that's my opinion on Scoot.
Gabriel, you heard Dan mention a Russell Westbrook comparison. I've heard that one before, and I've heard Derrick Rose before. Is that something you're seeing as well, or is it an evolution of that? Is there something different in his game, a wrinkle we should be looking out for?
As far as the Russell Westbrook comparison goes, I do see that a little bit. At times, Scoot can get himself into a bit of trouble. I think his decision-making is still an area of his game that needs growth, and I think that'll happen over time. As far as Derrick Rose goes, I think you do see some of that just freakish athleticism where he's able to just rise up, especially off of 2 feet, and just throw down on either big men or wings or also guards, whether that be in transition or in the half court. So I do see an element of both of those players, but I do think in a certain aspect, he is an evolution of those guys where the mid-range game is there, and I'm a big fan of his form. I don't think there's necessarily any mechanical issues. Don't get me wrong, there are some things that he does have to fine-tune, but in general, I do see him profiling as a plus shooter as his career goes on. Although that is to say his three-point percentage wasn't great this season for Ignite, only shot 32% from three. But again, I think the form is fine. Again, maybe some slight mechanical or maybe some slight touches here and there, but generally it's a pretty solid form. So I do think in that aspect, it is a bit of an evolution from that hyper athletic mold that we've seen before.
Well, guys, Gabriel mentioned numbers, and if we're going to talk numbers, there's nobody better to talk about that with than Seth Partnow, who's joining us. And Seth, I'm trying to figure out, as we look at these sort of younger players' numbers and three-point shooting and how they do at that level, is there a way that we should be looking at that as we watch these players? I don't think you can take those numbers for what they are. Is there a trajectory that you see, or is there no clear track?
There's three-point shooting is is among the less predictable skills that we have. There are we can eliminate guys who've not shot a lot of threes, guys who have not made threes at a reasonable rate, kind of below. Done the research in a number of different ways, like a low 30 shooters who shoot below 70% from the free throw line. Basically, the population of people who have that profile in college where they shot some threes, didn't make them, made below 70% from the free throw line, and became good 3-point shooters in the NBA, the list is Avery Bradley, and that's the entire list. So now who's going to become a good shooter? Who's going to be a capable movement shooter? Who's going to, almost more importantly, who is going to be able to be on the floor enough for their shooting skills to come into play? That's much more difficult to predict. So now, if you want to say that, like, compared to Brandon Miller, Scoot doesn't project as well as a shooter, I think that's fair. But the fact that Miller has shooting tools and some percentage to back up his claims, there's a lot of guys who've been very accurate from deep in college who have just not been able to make NBA shots, whether it's because they haven't been able to get the looks off cleanly or the extra couple feet of distance, or NBA length just bothers them more. So that's a little bit of you kind of make an educated guess, and then it is a little bit up to the realms of chance and player development to see who makes.
How do you go about that? For those of you who don't know, Seth was in the Milwaukee Bucks front office. When you're sort of looking at a draft pick like that, are you looking at a combination of statistics and mechanics? Does one weigh more than the other? How does that work out in that room?
How does it work out in the room?
Turn the light on in that room for us, Seth. Let us know how it goes.
It's complicated.
It's
how
back and forth.
How do kind of information streams is always a challenge, because the sort of the qualitative data you get from scouting, another word for that is just data. So it's in different units than the kind of statistical measure that we make. So it's easy if kind of the traditional scouting and the projection systems match up. That's great. Where it becomes more difficult is when they disagree, when a draft model likes a guy and the scouts don't, or kind of more common in my experience is a guy that the scouts like for some reason, and the for whatever reason the guy's statistical profile just does not like. In my experience, in most front offices, the scouts probably win the tiebreaker there, though that's changing to some degree. But it's difficult. There's no. I sent you guys a chart that I updated earlier today. Just the general fan underestimates the degree of bust potential that the average player, the average draft pick has anyway. So you're going to be most guys are going to miss, especially once you get outside of about the top 15 or so. So whether the scouts are right or the analytics are right is tough to say, because you're just going to be wrong lots no matter what.
I love that comment, because the draft is a crapshoot. You know what I mean? It's like you're investing in an 18, 19, 20, 21, maybe 22, maybe 23-year-old kid. And, as your expertise, like I could talk draft and prospects to Dan all the time, because this is not what I do. This is not. And I learned so much, but then it's like some of it's gut feel, and then some of it is kind of, to Seth, like fighting against the gut, because sometimes the gut, our human brain, or I guess our lizard brain, as they say, like our instinct sometimes, we're like, we don't always make the best decisions as people. So I respect the success stories, because it's crazy.
What was interesting is as Seth was sort of talking to us through this, when Seth said that the scouts are winning for now, Dan really agreed. Dan, why is that now? And do you see it changing? Because I could see where the analytics are pushing back a bit, right?
Yeah, I think it's a running joke what Seth said, but the philosophy that we teach at SBC is, obviously you're doing your homework, you're watching for, writing one report, things like that, right? But you have to trust your eyes, and you use the data to back up what you see, right? Not to prove your point, but does it align with what you're seeing? So if you think a guy is a great shooter, and you go, oh, he's a great shooter, he shoots, 36%, that's what it says. But if you dive deeper, it's certain types of, is it catch and shoot? Is it off the dribble? You need to really break it down with data that supports what you see. And if those things don't align, well, then the smart front offices know that. They know that that data doesn't align with what's being seen. So there's something there that we either have to dig deeper on, or maybe that's a red flag for us.
Okay, so just so everybody knows, we're about 5 minutes away from the start of the draft. We'll be watching. But before we let Seth go, Seth, is there something that you watch for? Is there a player you're watching for tonight? Is there anything that you've seen that jumps out at you that we should all be watching for tonight?
Dan and I argued about it, about the difference between Scoot Henderson and Brandon Miller, and sort of the concern about will what he do translate to winning at the highest level. My philosophy has always been, if you're talking about drafting at the top of the draft, you kind of don't care about what a guy's average outcome is, because you're trying to get that top 5, top 10 player. So who has the tools, the skills, the background about his work ethic, the feel for the game, that they have the best chance to end up as that like all NBA first or second team level player. And for all that you can see about what Brandon Miller, that like translates more directly to being a competent, even solid or better NBA player, there might not be that pop, that it factor, that the positional size, just the jump off the screen athleticism that Scoot has. And that's why, I would pretty strongly prefer Henderson. And, I'll admit to not having dug in as much on these guys as Dan has, but even with the skill limitations, I would be kind of tempted by Amen Thompson for kind of similar reasons. Just because of that, I'm aiming for the top 10, 15, 20th percentile outcome. And if I get that guy, what am I getting? Am I getting a perennial all-star top 5 type player? And I just think that chance is it's hard to completely evaluate, whether with metrics or an eye test. But I would say that I just see more of that in a player like Henderson than in a player like Miller.
Oh, Seth and I have had a very long conversation about
mix it up,
this.
Boys. What did you think, Dan?
So I agree with upside, right? If you're going to if you think that you can get in that top 10, that top, we'll call it the top 10% of the league, then Scoot most likely has that greater upside from a prospect standpoint. With Miller, I feel like you're a little more, what you're getting, and maybe his ceiling is a little lower, but it's a little more secure, knowing that you can put him in NBA situations right away and you know what you're going to get out of that. And you can have a pretty consistent plan with him, compared to where does Scoot start to become that elite top 10% guy? At what point is that? So I don't disagree that Scoot probably has more upside than Brandon Miller, but at the same time, there's when does it come? Where does it come at? Who does he need around him? Does Charlotte, if it's Charlotte, do they have those pieces around him to bring that out of him? All those questions I start asking those in my head.
All right. Well, Seth, thank you so much for your time and your expertise, and we'll let you guys fight it out after the show. But looking forward to seeing you at Summer League again. And yeah, when you come out to Sports Business Classroom, you have access to Seth's mind. And remember, folks, he lives to judge. So be ready for that. But yeah, Seth, thanks so much. And before we jump into the draft, let's talk a little bit more about Brandon Miller. And Max, our scout, has done the research and has done the work there. So, Max, what have you seen in Brandon Miller? What has impressed you with his game?
Yeah, I mean, talking to guys, from a three-point shooting perspective, Miller is a pretty damn good shooter. Open looks, he's hitting at about 50%. That actually drops down to shy of 38% when he's contested within a few feet. But he has that ability to get over most of the defense and get good looks here. As we can see, he's a catch and shoot guy. He can take it on the floor a little bit as well and get to the bucket. He has the ability to also find his teammates. If he gets stuck in a double team, he's pretty quick passing out of the double team, even though his assist numbers are not showing it just yet this season. I think that'll be something that might surprise folks at the next level. Just his ability to read that secondary defender coming in and get rid of the ball quick enough where he's making a play for his teammate. And on the defensive side, I mean, his length, his versatility there is really, at the top. He's able to contest and disrupt a lot on the perimeter when he's running around, and he's getting here second efforts, as we see from the season here, getting good looks, really following his shot as well sometimes and being able to get that bucket. But really, I mean, I think his fit looks like we're seeing Portland, I think, now. So I think fit there is pretty well next to Dame and what pieces are there. Obviously, it depends on how their front office views that selection and where they go with it. If they're trying to keep Dame, as Eric mentioned earlier, is that the guy that's going to be able to push the envelope for him to remain, or are they moving that somewhere else?
Well, this is where it gets fascinating, guys, because we're about to start the NBA draft. We're coming up on the top of the hour. Thanks for that, Max. And I know that all day long I've been watching Scoot to Charlotte, Brandon Miller to Charlotte, Brandon Miller to Charlotte, Scoot to Charlotte, and that's where it gets interesting. And as Eric said earlier, when Portland pops up, it gets really interesting for how they're going to approach it as a team building situation. I don't know what Dame would prefer. But I think that it's interesting to look at how they build that team, how those guys can work together, Eric.
So from the Portland point of view, if you have Miller, you've got a nice wing. If you've got Scoot, you've got a guard. You also have Simons. You have Dame. And obviously there's duplication positionally. So if it's a keep situation, you can argue, maybe you're Portland, you build around Scoot, get what you can for Dame, and go in a completely different direction. If it's Miller, is he a franchise guy that you can build around? I mean, it sounds like the upside is more if you get Scoot, you're going, maybe this is the guy who will be our best.
You're rolling the dice, right? You're going for a superstar.
Right. Miller, I don't want to draft comp, but Danny Granger was like a really good player, and he was a really good pro and an all-star. Was he at any point a top 5 player in the league in his career? No. So maybe that's Brandon Miller. Not to say that they're similar-ish games, but if that's his career trajectory, that would be a great career, and he would be a great pick.
Well, this gets into philosophy, what Seth was talking about, right? Seth said he's shooting for the moon on those top 5 picks. And Dan, is it fair to say that you're playing it a little safer? If you can get a Danny Granger at the 3 pick, you're pretty happy with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think his upside's Paul George ultimately once he learns the NBA defenses. So
that's different.
That's a different guy, right?
Yeah, that's different.
So if he stays the way he is now and he's just slightly getting better every year, which that's not what you expect from a top 3 pick, obviously, if he does that, then he's probably just a lesser notch under Paul George, and that's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. Now, Seth and I both agree that you need to take talent when you have to take talent. If you're void of talent, you just take the guy that's the best, right? That's my philosophy. If you don't have talent, you take that guy. Charlotte's just different. They already have an all-star in LaMelo Ball who needs to orchestrate offense, to have the ball in his hands, to be able to set guys up to get his own shot. I'm not sure. I don't know that there's a worse fit. If you want to go fit, if we're talking philosophy and whatnot.
It's that bad.
To me, it's not that it's bad. I just not sure that you don't maximize the potential of the number 2 pick if you already have that same guy at his position. You're almost drafting over LaMelo Ball by doing this.
Does it send a message to Ball?
I don't think so. I'm not. It's not a message. I just think it's more so where in the offense, in coach's offense, are you going to get the touches from these guys, and how do you keep them happy? That's really what it is, because it's not Scoot year 1. It's Scoot year 3, and then when he comes up on his extension, where is he at?
But I think what we could say is the Trae Young, DeJounte Murray thing kind of worked, but it also there were stretches where, like, it was taking turns. Like, whoever had the ball, Trey would kind of just stand there somewhere else. And the hope was that their, DeJounte's ability to defend would sort of offset what. But, to what you're describing, like, if you've got LaMelo and he doesn't have the ball, what is he going to do off the ball offensively? What is Scoot going to do when he doesn't have the ball offensively? Now, over a 48-minute game, there's enough minutes that you stagger to an extent. But, that's not what you're doing with your number one pick, number one overall pick. But
at number two, you're hoping that guy's leading you into the playoffs. The expectation is playoffs at least into year two.
And Melo, to that, needs to be on the floor for 30-something minutes a game, almost 40 in a playoff team. And Scoot needs to. So then it's like, okay, and I'm not saying it couldn't work. But, I think what Dan is saying, and I think what a lot of people are saying, is that you're not maximizing that. But I did hear Mitch Kupchak in a comment says that they're just not good enough yet to draft for fit.
Sure.
And so you take the highest talent available. Now, whatever Mitch wants, we'll find out. Or he seemed to intimate that MJ is going to make the call, Michael Jordan's going to make the call.
He should.
Outgoing. Well, he's the outgoing owner. He's minority owner. So, are we happening? I think the first pick is
San Antonio's on the clock.
They're on the clock officially. So
we have a good sense of what that's going to be. So Max, get yourself ready with your analysis. We know what's coming there. Let's just jump into that guy just a little bit more. Dan, I want to go back to, have you seen any other prospects like him? Anybody that you can compare him to? Why is he so? Is it the 7'5"ness? Is it the handling? Is it the complete package? What are we talking about?
It's all of the above.
You know what I want to get to? Best case scenario. The absolute best case. His career is over the moon. He plays better than we ever think. What are we talking, Dan?
I mean, you're talking Wilt Chamberlain. You're talking Bill, you're talking Shaq, Tim Duncan. You're talking about those guys. He's in the conversation with them, if not better than them.
Wow.
Like that's the type of guy that he is. That if you're saying everything goes right, he stays healthy,
and he's the best case scenario of Victor Wembanyama.
100%, he's up there. You're talking about him either better than Wilt and better than Shaq and better than these guys, or you're talking he's just a notch below him, and that's obvious. There's a lot that goes with that. I would never want to put that on a kid, immediately. But think about the position that he's in. He's going to arguably the best franchise for him. It's the best fit. We talk about fit for teams. As a player, it's probably the best fit for him. They know exactly how to develop things. They have the greatest coach ever. They have one of the best front offices in the league. They know what they're doing. It's not like these, I've said this if there's a team that I trust with developing the league's next great star, it's San Antonio. They've done it multiple times. So, yes, I think ultimately he would be a top 10 player all time if everything goes right. He might even be top 5.
Okay, so we're less than an hour in, and Wembanyama's better than Wilt. We want to remind you now that
I didn't say today. You said everything goes right.
Can I just? The one qualm or worry is that guys that tall, above 7 feet, have a history of struggling with leg injuries and
how do you control for that though? Yeah. How do you
see the cool thing about, after I dug a little more on him, he has such a unique training regimen. You have to think, like, from a physical standpoint, the bones in his feet are way bigger than yours or mine, right? Like his ligaments in his ankles are longer than ours. He has a very unique training regimen that goes on that he works on every day. And I think the greatest attribute that he carries is that he is in love with the process, and he's good with the process, and he's over himself. So now you have a dude who's 19 years old. He's over himself. He understands process that he practices day in and day out. And then you add his personality, the way he holds himself, and he doesn't make himself as if he's greater to be anybody, but he's just here like, I'm going to be the best that I can be. Does it not sound like an RC? Guy. Well, if RC was still, on the op side, or, and then you have Pop, obviously. Like, this is a match made in heaven to me.
I wanted to remind everybody that the chat is open if you want to chat on YouTube, Sports Business Classroom's YouTube page. We're live there. Also on Twitter, you can send us comments. I'll try to keep track, and if you have any questions for our experts here, I'll try to get that to them or to our group of scouts. We're the pick is in, and I don't suspect we're going to be surprised here.
This is my favorite part. It's like they've had, all this time, and now, okay, you have 5 minutes.
I can confirm that San Antonio is going to take the pick here. I can confirm. This just in.
I think I saw that there was a bet that was like $600,000, and you could win $300 if he's the first pick. So
I just think, if with him, you can literally play him. You can play him at the high post. You can play him in pick and rolls. You can play him side pick and roll. You can get him into secondary action. You can play him on the block. You can play him in the pinch post. Like, you can do so many things with him. Like, it's unbelievable the amount of ability that they can unlock. And if I'm being honest about San Antonio, the great thing about that is they're not going to make him do everything at once. They're going to make him do this, and this is your box for this year. And then next year, we're going to expand that box slightly. And then the year after, we'll expand it a little more. And if you explode out of that box, we'll expand it even more.
And this gets to what Eric was saying. He's going to get good when San Antonio gets good, as they build through that process. And one thing I'm looking forward to here is seeing the picture of Victor Wembanyama shaking Adam Silver's hand. I mean, it's going to be something.
It's
really
unbelievable. And I'm not trying to overhype him. I want to make sure this is real.
I mean,
this is
better
real.
than Wilt. I mean,
this is real. I didn't say that. I said if everything goes right.
But I do like going down that road, like the best case scenario.
Right.
But today, if you were to tell any of these teams in the league that they can have Victor Wembanyama and he's your best player, every single team in the league would take him, maybe except Denver.
Because of Nikola.
Yeah,
they take him and figure it out and play him at power forward. You know what I mean?
Sure, whatever they wanted to do. But every team in the league would take him if that was the guy they had to build a team around. They would take him today. That tells you something.
There was no trade that was going to happen.
Zero. No, this has been shut down. This has been locked in since it happened.
There was no superstar that was going to. If they were offered Dame or an older star, there was a younger star happen. Or whatever. It just wasn't. So question for you is what should they be putting around him? What do you think they need as far as is a Fred VanVleet too old? What is the right kind of guy?
This is another strength of Victor Wembanyama is you can put a multitude of types of players around him. You don't have to put a certain type of guy around him because he's so good and so fluid. You can put some 3-and-D guys around him, and really, to me, you need ball handlers that don't turn the ball over. Just don't turn the ball over. Let's get him the ball. Let's not try to turn this thing over. And obviously, pick is in, and he is chosen first by the Spurs.
That was stunning. I thought they might go with
no.
A moment ago in the chat, one Larry Kuhn reported that San Antonio are, quote, laser focused on Wembanyama.
I think that was very safe to say
as
that they were.
As they should be. Yeah, this is a moment that's been a long time in the making. Last summer at Sports Business Classroom, Charles Dubé-Bray, who works with us, told us a story of how he knew Victor Wembanyama when he was 12 years old.
Yeah, wow. And he coached him then.
Yeah, and that's people started asking about him at a very young age. And at that age, Charles said that it wasn't obviously clear that it was going to become this. He was a good player, but it wasn't obviously clear that it was going to become this. But what a moment for the San Antonio Spurs. What a moment for Victor Wembanyama. And frankly, to me, guys, what a moment for basketball fans everywhere. Because it's the world's game now, and this is a world superstar.
These are the days that you suffer through. This is your reward right here. Because San Antonio had to suffer a little bit. Like they tried to rebuild after their championship run, but sometimes it takes time and a little bit of luck. And I just feel like this is such a good place for him, and it's a proven winning place that knows how to build talent.
It's because Adam Silver's actually pretty tall.
He's
just
taller
than you're watching the broadcast.
He's taller than Dan and I, right? I mean,
Adam's way taller than us.
He's got some good height, so for perspective.
Commissioner Silver? Oh yeah, he's about the same height as me, I'd say.
Well, let's get off our heights and get over to our scout, who is probably just shocked that Victor Wembanyama was picked first. Max, your thoughts? This is the moment we've been waiting for. What is San Antonio getting in this maybe once a generation prospect?
Oh, you took the word right out. I mean, definitely once a generational type of guy. The 7'5" can guard multiple positions, can lead the break if necessary. And really can take his pick all across the court from what he wants to do. He plays at his own pace most of the time. And that's one of the things that really allow him to get to his areas and produce from those spots. From the defensive side, rebounding as well. He's not just a rebounder in his zone. He'll be able to use his length to grab a few extra. Hopefully he won't be getting too many over the back calls, but with that reach, he'll have the ability to probably hit somewhere 8 to 10 rebounds, this year on average each night, I'm thinking. And really something you guys touched upon earlier with his kind of preparation. I'm not sure if we've seen it, but when he came over to play the G League Ignite, some of his pregame stretching routine and yoga and the work that he does for his core makes me feel like, just seeing that, he's probably a lot more limber than some of these more recent players that are over 7 foot that have worries. I mean, Porzingis has had some injury worries over his years in the league. Chet, unfortunately, didn't play last season. And I'm thinking with Wembanyama's prep and the way he takes care of his body, even at such a young age, he's really attuned to all of that stuff and probably will be able to, have a little bit, hopefully, of a lengthier career with those things as he continues to grow and add muscle to his frame as well.
We're coming up on the number 2 pick, about 2 minutes away. And Dan, first of all, we got 2 minutes away. What are you thinking with Charlotte?
I'm going to stick with Miller. Everything I'm hearing is Miller. I mean, obviously, Charlotte's been back and forth, and there's probably – and this is a tough decision. I want to make sure that sometimes we just watch this stuff and go, oh, well, they should do this and they should do that. That's all of us, right? And this is literally a franchise turner with new ownership coming in, and with this pick in particular, this could change the trajectory of the Charlotte Hornets. Like, this is a huge decision.
Well, tell me about where they are in this process.
They have to make a decision soon on LaMelo Ball and pay him, right? So it's kind of time to commit or not. And LaMelo is eligible now. Not now, but July now. So now-ish, in a few weeks or less. They're probably already negotiating. They're not supposed to, but they're probably already negotiating and getting a sense. And a guy like LaMelo, where he's at, is probably saying, I want max. That's what everyone.
That's fair.
Yeah, and
is there any doubt that he's a max player?
I mean, there's a new economy in the NBA, but I think it's safe to say that Melo is expecting the max, and Charlotte is expected to pay that, or if not, trade him to a team that would. Right.
Okay.
So I have heard zero buzz in NBA circles that LaMelo is being traded. So there's, and again, that could change, that could shift. There are decisions at the very top with new ownership. What happened when we had new ownership with the Timberwolves? They went out and got Rudy Gobert. We had new ownership with the Phoenix Suns. What they do? They went and got KD. And
you need
Bradley
to make
Beal.
a splash, right? There's some.
Well, you don't need to.
Well, there's a feeling.
You definitely don't need to.
Well, yeah, if you're the new owners at the Denver Nuggets, you don't need to make a splash. You got your team all together. But
right, like there's a obvious recent history of going for it, and that's a very dangerous thing. Certainly, Charlotte should not be going for it based on where they are. Yep. To make a splash, they need to make the right decision because they're just not good enough yet. They're, if healthy, if they bring back Miles Bridges, who didn't play last year, he had a rest domestic situation. Without getting too deep into it, he could be back along with P.J. Washington. And now you look at this team, maybe you're trading Gordon Hayward, maybe you're trading Terry Rozier. Certainly if you're getting Scoot, you don't need Rozier at $20-something million a year and then pay LaMelo, and you need to develop Scoot.
Sure.
So, and I know we're coming in on that pick soon, so this is a fulcrum moment. And certainly you need to make a splash, but you need to make the right decision. They're not in a position where it's like, okay, we'll go get KD. If it doesn't work out, we'll cope. But, I mean, I don't know how the Suns are going to get out of that necessarily if it doesn't work. But that's not the problem we're discussing right now.
We used to have on NBA TV folks banging away on their phones on the set, and I just saw Dan Purcell doing that. Dan, I suspect you have some knowledge of what's coming up here, right?
Yeah, it's confirmed. It's Miller. We knew this beforehand, but it was Well, I knew this beforehand, but there was back and forth. I felt like it was posturing. Now that we're past this, I felt like it was posturing by Charlotte to see what they could get value-wise out of New Orleans. That was my opinion of it. And now it's super interesting. Here we go with Portland. Now we're talking. If they take Scoot Henderson here, this is what we waited for. If they take Scoot Henderson here, what does that mean? Or it might not mean anything, and they just may wait and trade him by the end of the night. That could happen as well. They may just corner the market. Yeah, I mean, in a sense, Portland could just corner the market here, take the best player available because they know they have value from a trade perspective, and then by the end of the night, they let the team, the 2 or 3 teams that want him, battle it out on what most value they can get. That's not a bad. It's actually not a bad way to go about it.
Speaking of cornering the market, it appears that Max has cornered the market on our top 2 picks here. So, Max, you got Brandon Miller. That's the way Charlotte went. Maybe a better fit with LaMelo Ball. What does he bring to the table for Charlotte?
Yeah, I mean, he's a spot-up guy that will definitely be seeing looks real quick and real easy. From coming off motion, moving his feet, he is able to get open looks coming off screens as well. Really astute with his footwork and being able, ready and prepared to shoot if he's getting it in a catch-and-shoot situation as well. So with LaMelo's handles and vision, I'm sure he will be the recipient of more than a few open looks, which he's hit this year at almost 50% with no defenders within 3 or 4 feet of him. And as we can see here, he's really able to also break down his defense and get to the cup as well. First step probably could be a little bit quicker, but all the skills that he has, the versatility, both offensively and defensively, from a shot-making standpoint, from a disruptor on the defensive end, he should be a really good piece in Charlotte.
Mentioned, talk about his ability to shoot off the dribble. I see him on catch and shoot quite a bit. Does he have the ability to shoot off the dribble as well?
Yes. So off the dribble, percentage-wise, he's a little bit lower, probably somewhere in the mid-30s, mid to high 30s. As opposed to, his three-point shooting when it's kind of just spot-up opportunities, which we see a lot of here, about 52%. But he does have, fluid shot as well. So he can get that look over most defenders at 6'9", and be really able to, see over his defender, find that opportunity on that look and really get up with his springs as well. Here we see, from a standpoint of, how he has that second spring, second effort. So he's able to really pop back up quickly, get that shot off.
For Portland in the sense of even if they have the value, I mean, even if they may not want him by the end of the night, you're cornering the market on the best player available and a guy who has value. So this is really smart.
So, Eric, walk us through this, and for people who haven't joined us until now, what's going on with Portland? What's their situation as a team? Obviously, Damian Lillard has been the cornerstone of their franchise for a while. What options do they have? What paths can they take?
Well, they have a lot of flexibility, but that flexibility may be invested in keeping Dame there, right? So Dame, of course, he's expensive, very expensive, $50-ish million a year. You're paying Simons about 26 roughly a year, and you're paying Nurkic in the 18-ish million a year. And then you're talking about re-signing, and from what I've heard, they're going to bring back Jeremy Grant. So if you're bringing him back at, say, 25-ish, I don't know the exact figure, but let's just call it 25. Now you're getting committed pretty heavily to what you have, and you've got Shaedon Sharpe. I've heard they love Sharpe, and they feel that they could grow with Dame and Sharpe and another veteran that an impact veteran. So maybe that's DeAndre Ayton. Maybe that's another guard. I mean, if the guard is sharp and it's Dame in the backcourt and you've got Grant at the 4, maybe you need a 3, but you definitely need a 5. So they have more than one hole to fill. So then the question is there a better place for Anthony Simons?
And all of this has to satisfy Damian Lillard? Is he signing
Dame
off
wants
on this?
to be there.
Okay.
It's not like he's saying, if you don't do right by me, I'm out. This is the opposite. This is somebody who's like, I want to spend my whole career here. Let's make it happen. He's told, from what I'm told, he's told ownership, leadership, he wants to be there. It's just a question of how does it work? Because every year, I mean, a couple of years ago, they went to the conference finals, right? 2-3 years ago. And they're not trending in the right direction, didn't make the playoffs. He had some injuries. So there's some potential here for, and I'm not saying this is what, that it's going to work out long term. You can argue they should be going in the other direction. You can argue it's time to move on from Dame.
This is your favorite team to look at right now, just because of the situation.
This is just the story, and obviously, Scoot's the guy, so it's happening now. The drama was, the drama was, would Charlotte go with Scoot? And all intel said that they were going with Brandin, and then there was a little buzz that Scoot might be the guy, and that there was some division in Charlotte. But here we are. We're getting what we expected. I mean, this is, if we look on our mock, our mock 7.0.
Are we 3 for 3?
So far 3 for 3. And there was some question. But we went with what we were, confident in addition to, what our scouts thought, and along with the intel that we gathered, and, Dan's influence and their influence into each one individually, arguing in all the best way, arguing as you're supposed to, not agreeing with each other, and then, coming to consensus. It was a lot of fun to do this project with our staff.
So I'm seeing a lot of trade Dame on the move now in the chat section. I'm not seeing anything like that confirmed. Dan will yell at me when it is. But I do know that it's confirmed that Gabriel Mendez spent a lot of time looking at Scoot Henderson. So what are we talking about as a player? What are the skill sets that he has? And I guess if you can get to it, how does he fit with maybe a Damian Lillard, Gabriel? We pulling him up now? There we go.
Can you guys? Yeah, so as alluded to before, Scoot Henderson is a hyper-athletic playmaker, a growing facilitator, a guy who is a talented mid-range scorer. The three-point shot is still an area of growth, but again, he's a multifaceted guard who, again, has all NBA upside. With Portland, this isn't, the perfect fit, right? As alluded to before, this is probably a pick that will get traded. But just looking at the fit currently as standing with Damian Lillard on the roster, I think their games mesh in a sense as to where Damian Lillard is obviously a high volume 3-point scorer, and Scoot can kind of play off of his gravity and use it to cut, maybe score more off ball. Maybe Portland and Chauncey Billups can take advantage of that athleticism, as you can see here, more as an off ball scorer. But again, this is a pick that you presume will be traded, just given the depth of guards that are currently on that Portland roster that deserve playing time, and ample playing time at that. But again, Scoot Henderson is an extremely talented point guard prospect that has all NBA upside and is, again, a multifaceted player.
CJ, they were really good. I mean, I know we could talk about what they didn't do. How is that different? Is there something that could work in a similar fashion? What's different and what's similar to that kind of two-guard backcourt?
Well, I think CJ McCollum is a little bit different from Scoot, given that there's a bit of overlap with CJ's skill set and Damian Lillard's skill set, as both, more so jump shooting shot creators and, more so perimeter oriented scorers, whereas Scoot is more of a guy that's going to focus on getting to the rim. He's going to be using that athleticism to either blow past defenders or just power his way through smaller guards to get to the rim. So I think there's a little bit of a difference there. I think Scoot will provide Portland with the rim pressure that you just weren't getting from CJ McCollum. And as far as playmaking, I think CJ McCollum took a little bit more or that area of CJ's game grew when he got to New Orleans. He wasn't necessarily this heralded playmaker with Portland. And I think that's a big area of growth that we saw this past season with Scoot for Ignite.
All right, guys, so this is where it starts getting interesting to me. Thank you so much, Gabe. We're going to the fourth pick. It's the Houston Rockets. First of all, Dan, what are you seeing for Houston here? I know that they have Jalen Green. I know that they have Jabari Smith. Jalen Green is absurdly athletic and handles the ball. Where do they go? What should they be looking at?
I mean, it's always good to have wing depth, right? In this league, you got to be able to switch all five. Ideally, you want to switch 4 out of 5 if you can on defense, right? Also, offensively, they probably need a little more shooting. They need a little more catch and shoot, and I guess a guy who could create his own shot doesn't hurt either. I'm seeing Ausar Thompson here going 4. That's kind of what the direction is.
Okay. Does his skill set overlap with Jalen Green's, or is there enough diversity there?
I think it does a little bit, but the thing about the Thompson twins, both of them, they're super high ceiling or super low floor.
You're sounding like Jalen Green again, though.
Yeah, it's almost like you watch them and you go, wow, I see that they can be a top end player, right? And at number 4, you're taking a guy you want in the top 10% again, right?
So the Seth theory.
Yeah, which I agree with Seth on that. And the Thompson twins, especially Amen, has a very high ceiling. He can be very, very good. But on the flip side of that, he could also be the guy that is very, very, very low. And this is where you take those shots, if you can, because obviously you want to get in that top 10%. You want those top 10 players if you can get them.
What's the picture with the Houston Rockets right now? Where are they?
I mean, they have maybe more flexibility than anybody in the league. And certainly the Spurs have the most cap room and the Thunder have the most picks. But the Rockets have a combination of cap room, they have picks, they have a player in Kevin Porter Jr. Who has a specific structured contract where if there's a team that has to cut money right now to get out of tax, which is part of the new rules. There was already tax in the old rules. In some ways it's worse, in some ways it's better. But if there's a team that feels compelled to get out of money, you could stretch out Kevin Porter Jr.'s money over 9 years at a very low dollar, and it's basically a get-out-of-jail-free card where you can chop off like 16, 17, 18 million or whatever it is off your payroll by stretching him out. So you would trade for him. So this is the sort of decision where you're the Rockets, where maybe you like him as a player and you see how they all fit together. Maybe there's a team that's offering you something for whatever to get that kind of flexibility. They have a lot of young players they could trade. They have a lot of prospects now. Do they have a top-tier prospect that everyone's bending over backwards to get? I don't know. But they certainly have a lot of nice young players who could certainly help a team that needs young players. You know what I mean?
I will just tell you this. I'll add to this. I got a chance to see a lot of the Houston Rockets last year doing the highlights for the NBA. A player that is interesting that you can build around, Alperen Sengun, is a really talented player down low. Mm-hmm. And, I don't know how that works, Dan, when you have a player that sort of surprised you, came out of nowhere to be this good that quickly. Do you start to pair players with his skill set?
I think people that can complement what he does is always important, right? But he's not the main cog on this team. It's going to end up being either one of these top 5, draft picks that they have. I love his game. I think he's an impact player. But at the end of the day, I'm not sure that he's the guy that you're building.
You think it's Jalen Green's team right now, but maybe either whoever this pick turns out to be, and we're seeing it now that it's Ausar Thompson.
Yep.
It's either Ausar if he's as talented as Jalen Green, or maybe Jabari at some point. That's what you're looking at, Dan?
Yeah, and it's how much does he complement the other wings, right? Because you're going to have to make a decision on Jalen Green. Obviously, usually, for the most part, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me. Seth or Eric probably helped me with this, but when guys come up off their rookie scale into extensions, the majority of people sign their extensions, right? They're usually offered that extension, and you're thinking these first round, especially these top 5 guys, this is a 7-year marriage, right?
Yep.
Probably with this group now, because it's 2 years back on Jalen Green, it's a 5-year marriage. Seeing where we're at really after 4, and so. I'm very interested to see how this works out with them. Amen literally can be one of the best players in the league if he develops, as a lot of people think they will. He's also a guy that could fall. I mean, he could just not be as good as planned, I guess. is the word I'm looking for. I'm trying to be.
Well, no, I understand what you're saying, because like if you look at Jalen Green, he's a guy who averaged over 20 points a game, but it was very low efficiency numbers. I know that scrambling to get some scouting in on Amen is there. He is Gabriel Mendez. Let us know what are your thoughts on this guy?
Well, Ausar Thompson is pretty much a point forward. He's right around 6'7" with a 7-foot wingspan. A bit on the lighter side with 200 pounds, but that aids him as he's just an extremely gifted athlete with he's a plus vertical athlete, very quick, very nimble. This really shows up on both sides of the floor. On defense, he's a great point of attack defender for overtime elite, where he's able to utilize his length and size and speed to harass ball handlers and pick their pockets, pick off passes when he was weak side or position off ball in general. And offensively, he is a gifted playmaker, capable of performing passes that, quite frankly, you just don't really see too often, where he's jumping midair, spinning around, and finding guys open in the corner. And, that's just not something that you see a ton of. I think with Amen, he's going to be Houston's starting point guard, given that playmaking ability, which might be the best in this draft class. I think you slot him in as the day one floor general for Houston, and you have guys like Jalen Green or Jabari Smith play off of him, some of the other wings and some of the other collection of young talent that Houston has amassed over the past couple of years. But I think the offense is going to run through Amen, also Jalen Green to an extent, but I think Amen's playmaking will be able to take this offense to another level. The question with him is going to be the jump shot. Mechanically, it's very flawed. His release is a bit low. There's a bit of a hitch in the windup, and I just don't know how effective the jump shot is going to be at the next level. So for Amen, the question is going to be, how much does the jump shot hinder him at the next level and from reaching his ceiling as a lead guard?
He's going to come in and you think he'll be the starting point guard day one. What kind of impact does he have on Jabari, in your opinion?
I think they're doing very, very well, considering the fact that Jabari Smith isn't a guy that likes to put the ball on the floor too much. He likes to utilize 1 to 2 dribbles. And I think Amen can really unlock Jabari as a pick and pop player. That's not something that we really saw this past season with Houston, given that Jalen Green and Kevin Porter Jr. aren't necessarily the best of facilitators. So I think Amen, and with the rim pressure that he does provide, will free up a ton of opportunities for Jabari Smith, in pick and pop situations.
Well, I've watched a good bit of film on Amen, and it's just, Gabe, thanks for that. It's just wild to me to think that they have a guy who, even if he's not quite as athletic as Jalen Green, he's almost right there, that talented. You put those two at 1 and 2, it seems like there'd be a lot of turnovers from a young team, but you're building for the future, right, Eric?
Right. I mean, we talked earlier about Charlotte not being good enough yet to draft fit. This was the worst team, or among the worst teams in the league as far as record. I think they might have been worst overall. And so you've got to get the best players. And so does it all fit? Like, you have obviously a scoring big in Şengün who's not a rim protector. You have sort of a do-everything Jabari Smith as far as potentially being a very good, but maybe he could grow into like an Anthony Davis kind of defensive role where he's helping a lot with his lane. I'm not saying he will or is there anywhere close. And then you have Jalen Green, who's puts up a lot of shots at a lower efficiency, super creative with his own shot.
But maybe his efficiency gets better when he has some of the pressure taken off.
This is where there's growth needs to happen. They're all young, and so the coaching. The Ime Udoka coming in is certainly a change that he's, as a rookie, got to the NBA Finals, right? Sure. So he's expecting a certain kind of thing, and his players obviously aren't the Celtics of a couple of years ago. So there's a lot there, and now you've got this big, athletic, multi-positional player, because you can come in at point guard. He can come in at 6'7" and play at either wing position. At least defensively, he can guard at other positions. So it's a matter of figuring it all out. And then what does that mean for Kevin Porter Jr.? Is he the bench guy now? Or there's only one ball. And it doesn't all fit, but I don't think that matters yet.
I've got an important question. Where are we on our mock draft?
Oh, I mean, so far we're 4 for 4. I feel like we're heading off a slight cliff.
Okay, this is Detroit's pick is coming in now.
Yeah, we're about to head off.
This is his brother. This is his brother.
Oh, Ausar's going now.
Yeah.
Yes. And we're waiting for Adam Silver. We're trying to read it.
There it is.
There it is.
Back to back. So you pair Ausar Thompson with Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey. You've got down low Jalen Duren, and you've got James Wiseman. That's a lot of young guys, a lot of young talent. But boy, that's something to behold, isn't it?
Talk about with a great coach. Don't forget, you also have a really, really good coach. Somebody that I was blessed enough to work with. The guy who really is good with the young guys. This is actually a really good fit. And just going back to 4, I want to touch on 4 real quick before we go to 5 here. I know Ausar's in. There was talk of Cam Whitmore being the 4th pick here, and then there's just some information, obviously, that has scared some teams off. So that's an interesting name. We just want to, as we're talking about all this, that name is dropping, and it's dropping fast. Cam Whitmore.
Okay.
But Ausar, I think this is actually a good fit. Again, this is a I think it's a hit or miss. He's either going to be great for you, or he's going to drop down and he's not going to be the guy that you thought he was. I have said all along I'm not sure about these two, basically because of the competition that they have played against. They were just head and shoulders above everyone else. So I'm very, very interested to see, especially those first 6 weeks of the season, how these guys respond. And, the great thing about Detroit, I just want to add, is with Coach Monty, he's going to put him in positions where he's going to be successful. And he's not going to put him into positions where he has to be the guy. And then on top of it, you talked about the supporting cast, Beau. This is a really, really good young team now. I mean, it was good and young before. You keep this team staying healthy. This is a playoff team next year if they're healthy. And this is not far-fetched in my opinion. I think that Detroit has done a great job over the last 3 years is it, to develop talent, to get talent. They have a couple hits in the draft. I mean, this is really starting to come together for them. I'm really happy for them.
Well, it's time to pull in another Jordan on the show. Jordan Silbert's here to talk to us about Ausar Thompson. I think the skill sets are similar to Amin, but distinguish between the two of the brothers for us and tell us what he brings to the table.
He's a very interesting prospect, being that he's one of the higher ceilings, but also a very low floor. The shooting consistency will be the key for Thompson to maximize his value. One thing he does a little better than his brother is he appears to be more comfortable as an off-ball scorer. So he'll pair well with Ivy and Cunningham. He also appears to be a slightly better defender and rebounder. He's very versatile on both ends of the floor. He could post up smaller guards and take forwards off the dribble. He'll be very capable secondary or tertiary playmaker for them. Defensively, he should be able to guard positions 1 through 3 immediately. He could also give some power forwards issues with his speed, athleticism, and his quickness. His defense can be inconsistent. He sometimes lacks effort to fight through screens or get in the right stance. He also occasionally takes lazy gambles on steals that could lead to easy layups for the opposition. The contrast between his defense on full motor and when he's lax is extremely noticeable. So he'll need to provide better, consistent defense, especially for a very young Detroit team. And young defenders aren't always the best in this league. But he has great size for the guard/swing position. He's clearly an elite level athlete. He can finish above the rim and through traffic. As I said, he's a great rebounder. He looks to push the ball in transition. He's a pretty good lead passer and create instant offense with his vision and attacks to the basket. He actually averaged the 2nd most rebounds per game on the team and 2nd most of all overtime elite guards. So he should be a well above average rebounder on both ends of the floor, given his size, athleticism, and 7-foot wingspan. His shooting wise, he's a bit awkward with his release on threes. He's much better on jumpers from that 12 to 18-foot range. A consistent 3 will probably take some time, if ever. But I do think he should be able to provide a consistent mid-range game. His shooting form has improved, much less movement in his feet, better hand positioning, and it's resulted in a better overall 3-point percentage. I think last year was about 22%. To this year, it's right around 30. So still not great, but significantly improvement. He shot 39% in 5 playoff games. He's not really good on contested pull-ups. He seems very rushed. He's at his best when he attacks the basket, looks for contact on playmaking, and in that offensive transition. That being said, he did have 6 games this season with 2 or more made threes. His brother Amen only had 2, but he did average 5 3-point attempts per game, so he does often settle and could force up difficult shots. But he's very quick off the bounce. He has good body control and he's a creative finisher. At times, I think he relies a little too much on his athleticism, which with overtime elite he can get away with. But with so many good athletes in the NBA, that might not be the case. He's a good passer, but could do too much. 3.3 turnovers per game were the most on the team. But he could defend well without fouling, fewer than 2 fouls per game. And he was the only player in overtime elite to average more than 2 steals and 1 block per game. So he has great upside on both sides of the ball and can make an immediate impact with his playmaking and shot making and versatility. He's got to improve his decision making and his shot making from the perimeter. And I'd like to see him operate a little more out of the high post or the low post. You know, he has the height to see over a lot of guys. And he has to continue to attack the basket and not settle for as many difficult jump shots.
So much, Jordan. Great stuff. And Jordan, with that analysis, led us right into the Orlando Magic picking Anthony Black, a guard out of Arkansas. Dan, initial thoughts on Anthony Black as a player and his fit with Orlando?
Love it. Actually, Eric and I were talking about him earlier. I think this is a great fit for Orlando. You know, there's something that I was saying to all the scouts, I think, too, as well, is, you know, usually when you stop hearing something about a player and you stop hearing something about a team, there's usually something going on. And there's been a lot of silence coming from both of these camps. So it's this is something we talked about earlier, and I think we have it on our mock as well.
We're back on track.
Yeah, back on track. And you know, I think this is this is a great basketball fit. He can play multiple positions. I love the way he handles the game. He could, you can see some of the when we start running the B-roll on him, you're gonna be able to see he has good vision. He can finish. He can play off the ball. He's one of those guys. He's like, you just play him wherever you want. Really, 1 through 4, you can kind of play him, and he figures it out.
Well, they do have a load of point guards right now that they're going to have to figure out the situation with. He's not necessarily a point guard, but you're saying he can handle and distribute, right?
Absolutely, yeah. He can make plays. I love his game for the NBA. I think he's so versatile. Is his upside as high as maybe a Thompson? Probably not. Is as high as Scoot or Brandon Miller? Obviously not. But I think he's going to be a really good player for a really long time.
I mean, it's just a team built around guys who can create, like Franz Wagner, Paolo Banchero. They have a lot of guards that they're still trying to figure out who. Fultz, Suggs, Cole Anthony, and I'm leaving out. Wendell Carter Jr. is obviously the guy in the middle, and they have other really good players. But you throw in another multi-positional kind of wing that can just add to that. So I'm excited to see what Orlando does.
Gabe, you're back again. We're talking about Anthony Black. What did you see in your film study?
Anthony Black is a multi-positional, really just a player. I mean, you can play Anthony Black wherever you really want to on the floor. He's really a bigger guard, stands at about 6'7", excellent ball handler, really does a good job utilizing his size and strength to get to his spots on the floor. Excellent finisher around the rim, capable of finishing with both hands. Again, does a good job using his size and just overall skill to finish around the rim and finish through contact. And I think he's one of the best facilitators in this class, specifically with his right hand, where he's able to just whip passes around the court. Does a good job finding shooters open in weak side corners as well. I think that's a big strength of his. And I think from day one, he's a guy that just fits that Orlando mold of just multi-positional guys who can do pretty much anything with the ball in their hands, right? Similar to a Franz Wagner or a Paolo Banchero. I think Anthony Black does stand out a little bit amongst that crop of guards that Orlando has, just because all of them have a significant flaw in one area or another. If I had to pinpoint one for Anthony Black, it would be his shooting. He's not necessarily a poor shooter. I actually think he's a pretty good spot-up shooter or off-ball shooter, but his form is a little bit slow. He has a bit of a wide base, so he's not going to be a guy that's going to be creating shots on ball. However, I think he's a guy that's going to be able to space the floor at an adequate level at the next level, and I think he slots in as in one of the guard spots next to Franz and Paolo for Orlando.
So much, Gabe. That's fantastic analysis. We're looking ahead now. Indiana selection about to be made, and Dan, what are you thinking? What are you hearing with Indiana?
They're going to trade this pick. That's not me. I read that one. They're going to pick Coulibaly, and they're going to trade him to Washington.
I like that because
Washington.
I like it because we're only missing one pick. So far we're on track. All right, like
you're addicted to the mock.
We put a lot of work into this, and so like I don't care on the team what teams isn't the question. The order we're doing. Obviously, it's going to branch off into spaghetti pretty soon. There's no way you can predict this stuff. But we did miss on Detroit, but I've heard I don't know, maybe 2-3 weeks ago how a lot of teams were talking about trading up to get this pick. So I'm really fascinated because I haven't really seen him play. I'm curious to see, what our scouts have to say.
Well, I will tell you that one of the people that works with us, Dave Dufour, loves his game and has seen
makes
him
two of us
quite a bit. Dan, tell us what you've seen with him.
He is so versatile. He has a lot of room to grow as well. If you watch him actually on our B-roll that's going to be happening, you'll see his body is just not developed yet. But if you get in an NBA system where you're working on your body every single day, you start to develop over time, right? And he has the good skill set. He can shoot it well enough. His stats don't jump out at you. He's not a stat jumper, right? But he played with arguably.
I was going to say
he played with Victor Wembanyama, and he took a back seat to him, and he just played a role. And I can't tell you how much I personally value guys who are already willing at 18, 19 years old to take a role when they have an obvious guy who is better than them. They're able to, again, get over themselves, right? That's a big thing for me, is learning to get over yourself. And now he is a guy with tremendous upside, and I think he's going to be a good player for a long time, as long as he keeps getting stronger and he's able to be a better spot shooter.
Well, quick reminder as we let Gabriel Mendez catch his breath there. He's coming back to us in just a moment for analysis. Get in the chat, ask us questions. I'll throw questions Dan and Eric's way. But, Gabe, as you're up again, tell us about this young player. Tell us about this star. And hopefully you did catch your breath between these two.
No, yeah, I definitely did. But Bilal Coulibaly, I think, is one of the better prospects in this class. Very high upside wing, a wiry wing, right around 6'8" with a 7'2" wingspan, has some of the best measurements in this class. And I think unlike that typical raw prospect, you see guys that have, these great measurements, great physical profiles, but don't necessarily have the best skill sets. I think Bilal has impressed mightily as a ball handler for his age and experience. He's a guy who can run a pick and roll and has grown as a facilitator, being able to thread needles, as you see here, as a nice little touch pass to his teammate Victor Wembanyama. And I think his shooting is an area of growth for him, but I think he took a positive stride so far throughout his young career, and I think that's an area that he has to continue to grow in. As far as the defense goes, I think he's an excellent on-ball defender. He does a good job utilizing his size, and the one thing that really stands out to me defensively with Bilal is his footwork, extremely quick feet, and and his footwork is very efficient. So if he's on ball and a ball screen is coming, and he does an excellent job of getting around it, utilizing his size, his length, and he's just a pest on ball. So I think he's a guy who has a ton of upside as a two-way wing, and I think he has upside to be, a bit of an on-ball creator. The on-ball shooting, however, is a bit of a question mark. His form isn't necessarily perfect. It's a bit more clunky when he's shooting live, when he's taking live shots. So that's definitely an area of part of his game that he can grow, but generally Coulibaly is a two-way wing that has a ton of upside. For Washington, I think Washington is just a team that needs an influx of talent, as we've seen with all the trades that have been made, or that they have made so far with Bradley Beal and Kristaps Porzingis. So bringing in Bilal and allowing him to grow and flesh out the weaknesses in his game as he continues to garner more experience. I really like this pick for Washington.
He's a raw prospect, or is a lot of development still in his game?
Yeah, it's going to take him probably 2 seasons. That you might usually don't send top 10 picks to the G League, so it's going to be interesting to see how Coach Carlisle gets him into the rotation, whether that's early or late, or is it just a developmental year? It's going to be interesting to see how they decide on his development.
Wait, he's traded.
Is he going to Washington?
He's going to Washington. So
I'm sorry, Washington. Sorry, I was staring at the screen here. I'm sorry. Yes, how Washington is going to develop him now with Washington, with those glut of guards they have. He might just step in and start playing right away. So I'll be very interested to see his development. But I would think this is part of the new regime's guy. This is one of their guys they're going to try to keep around. Obviously, it's a 7 year marriage that they're trying to build from here. And by the way, great job by Washington. You know, they got hit on from the Brad Beal trade, saying they didn't get anything, and now they're sitting here with a bunch of stuff, and they have a guy who could be one of the top 5 players in this draft by the time it's said and done.
Tell us about Washington's situation, Eric.
Well, so for one, they're traded for Chris Paul, but then he's going to the Warriors. They've traded for Jordan Poole now. They got Tyus Jones. Nothing is official that I know of. I don't believe any of this is official yet. But you had a regime change. And so Michael Winger is former Clippers, former OKC. Got to know him a little bit with his time in LA. He's very sharp, knows what he's doing, understands the cap extremely well. If you look at the moves that the Clippers made under he was the GM. They're really, really talented basketball executive, given the keys to rebuild this Washington team. So this is his first, in addition to trading Beal, his first ad.
Well, and it's going to be interesting to see what they do with Jordan Poole, what are the choices they make going forward. But we can go forward now and tell you that Jarace Walker is the pick at number 8.
This is actually Indiana. So
this is Indiana here, yeah.
They flip-flopped one pick.
So on Jarace Walker, I've been talking about with our scouts and Eric and, you know, our group, and, you know, Indiana has had Jarace Walker pegged for a good while.
They like what he has.
Yes, if this was actually a very good move by Indiana, they got the guy they wanted, and they got 2 future second round picks out of it. That is a textbook, really, really solid move by Indiana to gain an asset while still getting the guy that you were going to pick anyways at 7.
Well, this gives us a chance to introduce another one of our scouts with just a wonderful name for working in basketball. Elias Eldridge, how you doing, bud? Tell us what you see in Jarace Walker.
So great move by Indiana here. What Indiana is getting in Jarace Walker, they're getting a very mobile, very big 19-year-old at 6'8", 240. This is a rare build for a 19-year-old coming in. He's very versatile. Versatility is the name of Jarace Walker's game, both offensively and defensively. So what you're getting from him offensively is you're getting a 3-level scorer. He can shoot on and off the ball. 3-point shooting, he shot 37% from the catch and shoot, which is a bit above average there. 35% in the whole season from everywhere. And but off the ball, he can get his own. He's a great shot creator. He can hit tough shots in the mid-range. This probably isn't something you'll see him do a ton with Indiana, as the primary ball handlers are more so going to be Tyrese Halliburton. But he's going to work great alongside Tyrese Halliburton, in that he loves to move it up the ball, he loves to get himself open, and he can knock down those tough shots. I don't think Jarace Walker's going to come in and be a big time scorer for these guys, but he's going to work great next to a playmaker like Tyrese Halliburton. Defensively, Jarace Walker is a big time player. What he can do defensively is he can guard 1 through 5 effectively. We saw him do it all year through Houston. Again, with Houston, he was a big time winning player there. As a 19-year-old, you come in and you join guys like Marcus Sasser and other guys who are just winning basketball players. And he came in and did his job defensively. Huge green flags for Indiana here. And I think what Pacers fans can expect here is a very, very safe pick. Somebody who's going to come in and change the game for them defensively big time, and gives them a lot more versatility on both ends of the court.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting pick, and I did get a chance to watch some film on him as a player. Man, seems like a lot of talent out there. Dan, again, this isn't a chance for me at least to say thank you so much to all our scouts. Elias, thanks to you for hopping on there. If you're out there watching and you want to learn a little bit more about our program, our Sports Business Classroom will be in Las Vegas, immersed in the NBA Summer League, and we've got a look at SBC queued up for you right now.
This is Larry Kuhn, the GM of Sports Business Classroom, inviting you to a unique opportunity to break into basketball. Sports Business Classroom is immersed in the NBA Summer League. And when I say immersed, I mean we're right there in the arena, bringing the NBA into our classroom and putting you right into the Summer League action. You get great academics, challenging work, immersion in Summer League, and the chance to build connections in the league. Jumpstart your career today by visiting sportsbusinessclassroom.com. This is Larry Kuhn, the GM of Sports Business Classroom.
Again.
Lots of Larry. Just keep bringing Larry back in there.
Can never have too much.
You know who will really enjoy that? Larry could will really enjoy that. I guess, we're pulling up on the draft again, and we're seeing a lot of names that are being drafted. One name that we're not seeing getting drafted yet is Cam Whitmore. Dan, what are your thoughts there?
There's definitely some medical information that's out there that the teams have gotten picked up on late, and it's obviously showing. I thought that right here, Utah, they just picked, I think it was Taylor Hendricks from Central Florida. I think that's who they went with. I thought right here would be a good place for him, but obviously there's a scare on him. So this is developing. I mean, there was some talk about it yesterday and the day before, but now we're actually seeing it in play. He's the first guy that is dropping out of right now he's dropping out of the lottery.
Let's put Elias to work again. Elias, you worked on this guy as a player. Tell us, in a perfect setting, what can he do?
In a perfect setting, what Cam Whitmore is going to give you is great cutting, great movement off the ball. He's a very explosive above the rim athlete. He's joining this class as one of the top athletes, especially as a forward. So when you come in, he's cutting off the ball, very smart at doing this. And with that momentum, plus where he gets the ball, it's really hard to stop him at the rim. Further, he was a great catch and shooter for Villanova. Looked very comfortable doing that, and defensively is a very high IQ. I think what you're going to get from Cam in best case scenario is a guy who can just come in and complement any good playmaker. So which most teams have at this point. So Cam's gonna be a great issue for the team as far as we know. We don't know what's up with the medical stuff really yet. But just from what we saw at Villanova, he's going to come in and he's going to give you above the rim athleticism, high IQ defense, and comfortable shooting.
He's a guy that's dropping. We're looking at who's going to get picked next at number 9 with Utah. Eric, what do you got?
Well, we'll talk about this Cam Whitmore thing just to give a little optimism. If you're upset, if you're a big Whitmore fan, Michael Porter Jr. is a good example of a player who fell because he was supposed to be top 3-4 guy. Suddenly,
he's the number 1 player in his high school class.
Yeah, and suddenly dropped down, and he lands in Denver.
It worked out.
You know what I'm saying? Plus, he's on a gigantic extension.
Yep.
He does have, he did miss some time with injuries, and initially as a rookie, I believe he missed some time. He missed a little bit of time last year, but it's a part of the game. Now, you might not want to take that risk if you're top 5 right now because of the upside of the others. You don't want to take that risk. But he's going to go soon. I don't know if it's lottery. I don't know if he falls out, how far he falls. Someone might end up with the next Michael Porter Jr. here if you're a believer in Cam Whitmore as a player.
You see him as, Dan, when you look at him as a player, if he's perfectly healthy, how talented is he?
Honestly, he's probably the 4th or 5th pick in this draft. I had him pegged at 4 before the news came out about his injury. He is a talented guy. I want to make sure, this, and just to touch on something else that goes with this is tough. Like, if you're in that green room and you're falling, and this is tough. And not to take away, I thought, what our scouts were saying on him was on point. So I'm just going to add more to the realism of it. This is tough. You're sitting in that green room or you're sitting at home. I'm not saying him in perspective, but people that fall, this is tough. And to see how he responds to this moving forward is going to be great. I love when guys face adversity. You really get their true character. And it's really going to see what he's like. And if he really comes at this strong and he's able to overcome in physical and mentally, whoever takes him is going to get a player.
He's going to remember this.
Yeah,
he's going to remember this.
We got to remember these are real kids.
Yeah,
these are real guys.
There's emotions that are involved. There's some good emotions involved right now. For the number 9 pick with the Utah Jazz, Taylor Hendricks out of Central Florida. Quickly, back over to you, Dan. Thoughts on Hendricks as a player?
Yeah, I'm a fan. He's a bit of a development project. He can definitely catch and shoot. He's a lot of pick and popping is probably in his future. So I'm looking at him as more of a stretch 4. Defensively, he has some things that he has to work on in his progressions defensively, understanding where the ball's going, his 2-9, things like that. But I like this. I think especially with this team in Utah, this is a very good pick. I I have felt that they were going this route if somebody didn't drop, right? This was kind of the guy that fits really well with what they're doing. I don't think he's going to be, a jailbreaker and he's going to, make everything happen all the time, but you can see the athleticism. He recovers well. He's long. He's going to be able to do things that help your team win. So I'm a fan of him.
Thoughts on Utah real quick and where they are in their development, Eric? I know that, Lauri Markkanen may have been a surprise that he all of a sudden turns into an all-star there, but where's that franchise?
Well, they're sort of better than they expected more quickly, but I don't think that they're over buying into that where they're just going to be like, trade all these assets and let's win now. It's more like let's do it the right way.
Just keep building.
I trust the combination of Danny Ainge and Zanuck who run the team. They have that green light from ownership to do it the way that they think is the right way. And so they made several, obviously got a gigantic haul for the Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert trades and turned them into a really good team. Now, not an elite team, but a good team. And so I'm excited to see what comes out of Utah. They just have a lot of flexibility. If there's any one single word, maybe not the flexibility of Houston, but not that far behind as far as flexibility.
Well, the scout that dominated at the top of the draft was Max Rosenberg. Max is back now with Taylor. Tell us about Taylor Hendricks as a player, Max.
So Taylor Hendricks came on the scene late, probably around conference season with UCF, was a top 150 guy coming out of high school in the state of Florida, and really was just a plug-and-play player at UCF. Was able to catch and shoot very well, hot areas in the corners, about 40% from deep on about 5 attempts a game. Was averaging 15 points and about 7 rebounds, and really his defensive versatility is something that sticks out for you. He will contest. He does well contesting without fouling also. And from that outlet, rebound, run the floor. And he'll be a receiver on the other end also for some above the rim opportunities. Like Dan alluded to, there are some progressions that need to be worked on defensively. But that'll come with time and the right staff, helping him out there. But having a player that really didn't have many plays called for him as a freshman coming to UCF, now being a top 10 guy is a great jump. And pairing him with Lauri and Walker Kessler, that's going to be a heck of a front line.
Yeah, that's big and talented up front. Thanks so much, Max. I want to jump into the chat real quick. Kevin Nicholas Valentin asks a question, and since he asked, I want to get an answer. What does Dallas do at 10, guys?
Well, we have some news, and I'll just it's not from me. It's from Shams and Wojnarowski. It sounds like there's a swap happening here. OKC and Dallas are swapping 10-12, and part of that, Davis Bertans, is coming off of Dallas's books.
Big.
And they're shedding what was an ugly contract. But he only has basically one more year past this point, and that is an ETO, an early termination option, his decision, but only a small portion of that is guaranteed. So he's gone over time from being a really bad contract to being a very movable contract. Now the question was, would Dallas be able to move his contract with pieces to get a player back? So the answer is they're moving him for flexibility so that they can do something else, whether it's half cap room if Kyrie leaves.
I was going to say, where do they go now?
Maybe they keep Kyrie and have some more flexibility to make another move. They also would get a trade exception. Again, I don't know the full details. If it's only Bertans, then they're getting a $17 million trade exception, which is essentially, and it depends on exactly when the trade is. I'd have to look at all the details. But it's basically like a gift card where you can go out and get another player making up to that amount, plus it's in the new rules. I think it might be 100,000, it might be 250,000, but you get a little padding on top.
Is Oklahoma City putting their foot on the gas yet, or are they still building? This is complicated, honestly.
They're really good. Like they're a problem.
Talent.
They're a problem for the West. Maybe not elite top problem, but you do not want to be playing them in the play-in This year, you might lose to them in the play-in, let alone in a series. Now they're young, so they'll make mistakes in the series. But this is they're on the come up. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's like what, all NBA first team?
Josh Giddey can play.
I like Giddey a lot. I love watching the game through his eyes because he sees the floor really well. Lou Dort's a really nice defender. You got Chet coming in who hasn't played a game and has.
We expect him to be good.
Yeah, top 2. What was it, 2 last year?
Yep.
So now you're adding in what is I don't know who the pick is. I think it's Cason Wallace. Maybe?
It is.
Yes.
Yep. Cason Wallace is on his way to Oklahoma City.
Okay, so I like that if we're not hitting it on the nose, because that's not possible. As we were going over this, Dan kept telling me, we're not going to get it 100% as long as we're, we're in the sphere where, we had Cason at 8, he's going 10. We had Taylor at 9, he went 10. And the only player, and Walker we had at 5, he went at 8. So we're pretty much on track with, what's happening. You can't get it 100%.
I love how obsessed you are with this.
We put a lot of work into it, and
it's a testament. It's a testament to the scouts, along with Eric, and at how much work has gone into it, and how these young scouts have really pushed, and they have very great feel for what's going on.
Just to give you some insight, as I walked into our offices here in Costa Mesa today, Eric and one of our scouts scrambling in a room, working their knuckles off, getting ready to put out a 7.0. This is what I don't know if this is 8.0.
I'm filling out the actual so I keep track, because if anything, I'm organized. That's if there's a strength I have, and so I organize a lot of information, and Dan's intel and the intel I get from the people I communicate with, and then our scouts all get intel. In addition to their evaluations that even put these players in my map. I don't even know who half these players are, if you want me to be honest. I don't watch college basketball much at all. I would love to. I'm an NBA guy. I'm a pro personnel guy. So, but I'd love to hear what our scout has to say about this.
Well, yeah, and your scout, and Dan, real quick thoughts on Cason. What's he like as a player?
I'm a big fan of his. I like his defensive. Obviously, his defense stands out. He's a guy who can hound the ball. Also, though, offensively, I think he really does a good job of helping his bigs. I mean, there's actually, this shot just came up there.
Nice little pocket
pass. He's able to help his bigs and get space, but he can get downhill. He's a very good player. I think he's a great fit in OKC. Now, I will say that just from an instinct standpoint, he may be on the move somewhere else.
He's a backup guard there at best, right? Because you got Giddey and you got SGA.
I mean, they may want to go all three, and you can never have. In my world, my belief is you can never have too many guards, right? You win with guards. So sometimes it's a case of you get as many as you can, and you figure it out from there, right?
Well, Shai and Giddey have size too, so it's not like they're small.
Sure, and this could be a guy that they're saying, hey, he needs to guard the best. He needs to guard the point guard every night. We can't have Giddey and Shai and those guys doing that. So he may stay, but my instincts for some reason are saying that he may be on the move. I don't. That's just
Dan's spidey senses are. Hey, let's check in with Max, who's done some work. What's your scouting and what's your film study say about this young player, Cason Wallace?
Yeah, Cason Wallace is the defensive pest of the lottery. He'll be that guy that makes it hard on ball, off ball. He's a great defender. Able to disrupt on the perimeter, does a good job picking pockets, getting out and running, looking for his bigs, making those deliveries on the pass right at the rim, or also being able to, if the offense breaks down, he can take over and knock down long three. Pretty decent shooter from deep this year, around 35%. Needs to increase his consistency out there a little bit in certain areas, but definitely your two-way type of guard that you're looking for if you want that guy to come in, be a disruptor, be a distributor, be able to just be that extension of the coach, of course, on the court, and keep everybody where they should be, making things happen.
Player. I mean, they can throw a defensive lineup at you with Lou Dort out there too. I mean, those are two really talented defensive players. If you brought him in as a backup. Before we move on too quickly, Antonio in the chat had a question, and I'll just throw this out to our two experts here. Do we see Tobias Harris get moved tonight, or is the money too much, fellas?
It's a lot of money. It's not an easy thing to move. It probably requires cap room. So if there's a deal to move, him, it's probably not executed tonight. It'd probably be executed in July. I looked and I tried to find, I maybe in Indiana, but then we got to look at who do they end up with, right? Like Indiana has flexibility, could use a big forward, but then you start to say, well, who did they just pick up? And now what do they you want to pay $40 million for a vet, or do you want to develop this guy that you just drafted? So there's a lot of questions we don't have answers to. So the teams couldn't know 100% that they were getting those players. So, I mean, obviously, Spurs knew who they were getting, and it's safe to say Charlotte knew who they were getting.
Yeah, they knew who they could pick.
Like, Portland didn't 100% know who they were getting, right? Like, they might have known, but they didn't 100% know. So, you can't really negotiate a trade on, who knows. But as things start to unfold, and now, as Dan mentioned, Portland, if they don't want to keep Scoot, now they're calling teams, and you start going down the list. So, that's it's an exciting time. I mean, we've got another pick in.
Yeah, so, it's an exciting time for the Magic. Is this one staying in Orlando? Is that right, Dan?
Yeah, it's actually a little surprising. I think it's a bit of a reach. It's an interesting pick. Jet Howard,
Juwan's kid.
Yeah, Juwan Howard's son. It's a little weird because they have a glut of guards.
They really do.
It's a glut of guards, meaning it means somebody's on the move. It's who's it going to be. So I'm not sure where this is going and where Orlando is going right here. So it's be interesting to see where this ends up. Because if they reached for him at 11, either they really, really like him or there's someone else that really likes him, and somebody's going to be on the move here because they have too many. They have too many. Like, I guess you could. I guess you can never have too many guards, but in this sense,
is he a lead guard? I mean, because then
he's a shoot. Like he shoots it extremely well. It's just where's the fit? Is it okay? He's now our shooter. That's our role. Well, still you got to fill those minutes somewhere else. So it'd be interesting to see what our scouts say here about his skill set, but I'm interested in where he's going to be going.
Gabriel, it's up to you to talk to us a little bit more about Jet Howard. In all the film research you've done, what have you seen in him as a player?
Well, Jet Howard to me is more of a wing. I think he showcased some pretty solid playmaking ability, really projects to be more of a secondary creator at best, but he has shown some promising pick and roll reps with Michigan. But as alluded to before, his bread and butter is going to be shooting. He has a quick trigger at 6'8", high release, and very quick shot that he's able to get off over a ton of different over wing sized players, and I think that's going to be his calling card at the next level. Jet Howard was originally projected to be in the mid-20s due to his inconsistent defense, as to where he doesn't necessarily have a position on that end of the floor, isn't necessarily big enough to battle down low with some forwards or obviously big men, but he also doesn't necessarily have the footwork or really just the IQ at times to really guard on the perimeter. Also, his effort was put into question at times playing under his father, and for being 6'8", he's a very, very poor rebounder, doesn't necessarily show too much effort on the glass, and just doesn't necessarily seem to be able to time rebounds well either. So really for Jet, we're looking at a shooter, a guy that's going to be a quality movement shooter as well, a guy who Orlando can run off of different screens, a guy who can play off of Franz Wagner, now Anthony Black and Paolo Banchero. But really the question with Jet is going to be, can he survive on the defensive side of the floor? Offensively, he's going to be playing off of their main ball handlers and maybe do some tertiary playmaking, again, maybe secondary playmaking at best. But really with Jet, you're looking at shooting, and the question is, will he be able to survive defensively and also be able to, grab some rebounds, being that he is 6'8".
So next up, we've got the Oklahoma City Thunder picking, and this is a pick that's the trade pick.
This is Dallas. This is Dallas here.
And so, any sense on where they might go, where they should go? What are they looking at as a team?
Yeah, it's been no secret that Dallas likes Dereck Lively from Duke. They've been a big fan of his for a while, so I expect them to. Again, just like Indiana did earlier, this is a great way to add some value to your team and then still get your guy 2 picks later.
Right. So is Lively the kind of guy who can help them if they're trying to win with Luka? Can he help quickly?
Yeah, absolutely. You can plug and play him day one. He's a very, I don't want to say a simple game, but it's one that you can plug right into this, and he can impact you on both ends out.
Dunker spot guy?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And he's just overwhelming size from what I saw this year.
Huge.
And he's quick twitch guy, really quick into the hole. A lot of effort. I saw him play against North Carolina and just really loved the effort that he gave. Defensively, he gives you something as well on that back line.
You want him to be Tyson Chandler. That's what you want him to be.
Well, imagine, exactly. That's it. On the receiving end of those passes from Luka Doncic, that's something, right?
Yeah.
So as we watch Oklahoma City prepare for that pick that eventually is going to the Dallas Mavericks. Where are the Dallas Mavericks, Eric? We've talked a little bit about them. I know Kyrie Irving is a possibility. Boy, that's an interesting situation there with Kyrie Irving because the talent's obvious. Do you marry your franchise to him?
Well, I had talked to a lot of different people, and some had said that they believe that when they made the deal that they had pretty much had a handshake. Now, the Mavericks deny that there's a handshake, that Kyrie will come back. I was told that Kyrie's people expect to be paid the max, and that's coming from Dallas. Now, is that true?
Over the maximum time, too.
I don't know about the years. I know the dollars.
Okay.
And I don't know those dollars to be true. I know that the people who think that they're getting those dollars think they're getting those dollars. Now, the reality, a lot of people think one thing, and reality is a different, right? And that's just the nature of things. So if I plug in, and because now I need to look at their projection a little bit differently, their max cap position. Let's say they clear the books of absolutely everyone, and now I'd have to change it slightly for dropping down to, but if we take out Bertans, suddenly they can be in like the $40 million range of cap room, maybe even 43, and that's getting rid of Reggie Bullock. So maybe you keep Bullock. I don't know exactly what their path would be, but it's changing theoretically their outlook on how they approach things. Either you give that money to Kyrie, or maybe there's another answer. Getting off of Bertans opens up that possibility. So,
is that enough to get off into the non-tax mid-level?
I mean, they were already in the non-tax mid-level range.
Okay.
It depended on how much you're paying. For instance, Kyrie. Well, certainly getting out of Bertans helps. There was a way that they could pay Kyrie and have that non-taxpayer mid-level. For those who don't know, there are different levels of mid-level exception. One's going to be about 12.4. That's for the teams that don't spend that much. For the higher spending teams, it's the taxpayer mid-level. It's $5 million. So you're getting Kyrie and probably having 12.2, or you're going for cap space and spending on someone else, and you're getting what's called the room mid-level. And that, I think it's the number changed the other day. I have it right here.
Eric, where can people learn all about this?
Well, just sign up for Sports Business Classroom, and we'll help you out. It's about 7.7 now that the cap just the projections just changed. So you have maybe $40 million to spend and almost $8 million. Like they don't have to go Kyrie, but it's the question of, well, if you're not going Kyrie, who is it? And I don't have an answer there. So, the map changed a little bit. That's the one thing that I can't do. I can project what would happen if they made a trade, but I don't know what trades they're going to make until they make them, and that's when we react.
Well, just as a reminder, we're here in the Sports Business Classroom studio here in Costa Mesa, and I guess now's as good a time as any to let you know that, boy, the program's really filled up this year, but we've got new programs coming your way all the time. So stay on sportsbusinessclassroom.com. Follow us on Twitter, and you'll see what the future holds. The response this year has been overwhelming, and you can see the involvement of our students and the expertise they now have, courtesy of these two guys. But yeah, we're really proud of where this is going, and the new programs that are coming are going to be something pretty special. We're about to see the Oklahoma City pick in a minute, but before we get there, we've got a question from Matthew Liva, I believe, in the chat. Is Jalen Suggs the most likely guard to be traded due to his injury history if Howard stays? Fellas, I'm asking you to speculate now. Your thoughts?
Well, you're kind of like cutting your argument off at the knees, right? It's like
I filled your lead there.
It's like he's injured and doesn't, so they dump him. Like, well, if you're a team and you're like, well, I really want to get the best guard out of.
I just want you to know that I didn't propose this. Okay, don't put down on me. It's not
killed the lead right there.
Right. I mean, so Suggs has not been that healthy yet, but he's a good basketball player who, if you look at players, I mean, Michael Porter Jr. was an example.
Yep.
Barely did any. He didn't play his rookie year. Like, you can't get overwhelmed by that. Like, Markelle Fultz is somebody who I'm told they value highly, right? So where is that with Suggs? I think if Fultz is the guy they value, I think Suggs is right there with him. I think if there's a player, and this is where you start to look at the numbers and where the books can kind of tell you, well, who's up for a contract? And Cole Anthony is extension eligible. And so you don't have to make a decision long-term on Suggs. You don't have to make a decision yet. You kind of have to on Fultz because he's going into his last year. So, but in the case of Suggs, maybe you're looking to move Anthony because you don't want to pay him because you just got Jet Howard and you have all these other guys. They got Jet Howard, right? I'm not confused, right? Because it's,
your brain's okay. You're good
still. So, I would generally say, like, Suggs, you don't trade him because he's hurt. If anything, you develop him, get him healthy, and get him and trade him when he's at his best, not at his worst, right? It's
sure.
Buy low, sell high, right?
This is a business.
If you treat it from that point of view of, it's a general. I want to be delicate because these are people, and
sure.
Don't treat them like assets and whatnot. But if we're talking, are you trading this one or that one? You're probably looking at Cole as the one to go just because it's decision time to pay him, unless they value Cole above these other players, and then you start to make these more difficult decisions.
Well, our information man, Dan Purcell, was correct. Dereck Lively is the choice, eventually, we presume, ending up with the Dallas Mavericks. Jordan Silbert, this is your assignment. This is your guy. Talk about the fit in Dallas and what he brings to the table, and I'm talking about Lively from Duke.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be great in the pick and roll with Luka. I actually think it's funny that he ended up in Dallas. I think JaVale McGee is a relatively safe floor for Dereck Lively. He has great size and length for the center position. I think it's like a 9'4" standing reach. And we've seen a lot of first-round bigs see success over the past couple of years. I mean, Kessler was top 3 in Rookie of the Year. Duren had a good year. Obviously, Mobley and Sengun. So he has a safe floor based on his length, size, and defense. He has some upside as a potential three-point shooter. And actually, in most classes, I think he'd be viewed as by far the best rim protector. I think Wemby's probably slightly better. But Lively did rank first in the NCAA in defensive box plus minus at 6.8. For comparison, above 6 would be considered like an all-NBA type season. He also has, which I think is an underrated aspect to his game, additional upside as a playmaker. I think he could be a decent playmaker down the line. His assist percentage actually ranked in the top half of all major centers. And he improved a lot throughout the season. The final 14 games, he was able to play over 25 minutes 10 times and over 33 times. He never did that the rest of the season. And he finished really strong at Duke and held impressive workouts with his shooting and athleticism. He's an elite level shot blocker and a solid lob threat. So he's going to be able to pair really well with Luka on the pick and roll. He could also defend the pick and roll really well by using his length, and he could switch on the guards and deflect lobs to the rim. However, like many rookies, I do think he may struggle against more powerful bigs. His length and size will make players uncomfortable, and he can alter shots just as well as block them. He's a pretty good athlete, and he knows how to run the floor. And he has good enough lateral quickness to be able to maintain on-ball defense along the perimeter. He did lack some offensive versatility at Duke. He only attempted 3.5 shots a game, and 54 of his 77 made shots were dunks. And he was only 2 of 13 from 3, and he shot 60% from the free throw line. But he's a really good rebounder. He was I think in the top 10 in defensive rebounding percentage. And he has to work on his fouling a little. 2.3 blocks to 2.7 fouls is a subpar ratio. And he could rely a little too heavily on his length and wingspan at times. Powerful centers will be able to back him down. And others could use shot fakes and their finesse to create contact. But he's a very good pick and roll threat. I think he's at least a year or two away from being a potential pick and pop threat. But like I said, at the floor, he should be an elite level lob threat and a really good shot blocker who could defend the paint and switch on the guards on the perimeter.
Thank you so much, Jordan. And Dan, I'm not sure that Dallas needs him to shoot too much right now with what they have out there. Is that right?
No, they need him. I mean, it's rim, run, dive, rebound, screen and roll. It's going to be a pretty basic package for him to start. Obviously, over time, he might be able to get a couple looks as, Kyrie maybe if they keep Kyrie, that is, or Luka, they get into the paint and kick it out and whatnot. Maybe he has some opportunities in a year or two, but I think it's a basic. It's let's just start here and let's move forward based on how you develop, I think, is the approach.
Yeah, I'd just say that if they bring back Kyrie, their two main guys handle running an offense. That's the hardest thing, is to get your superstar and then the guy to play off that superstar. But both of them are not defenders, so that's what they need.
Athletes defender.
And defenders. So this fits what they need to a T. Based on what our scouts, what Dan and Jordan are saying. So it's how do you flesh out the rest of it. So do we have another pick coming
Well, the
up?
Toronto Raptors pick is in. Before we get to it real quick, Sam Pearson, a media and broadcasting student of ours. Quick question, who's the best general manager over the past decade? I don't know if you want to say this, Eric.
Oh, I'd have to think about it. It's not like a. I mean, some will say that.
Who are some of the names that pop in your head?
Obviously the Heat continually getting to the finals with guys who are, not necessarily, undrafted guys like that, Max Strus and Gabe Vincent, whatever.
So maximizing his opportunities, Pat Riley.
And of course, Sam in OKC, he gets credit for tearing down in the way that he did and building back up, because tearing down is not that hard. Mm-hmm. Anyone could tear down and get a bunch of picks. I feel like the turnover from a team that wasn't that long ago with Chris Paul and Russ and Paul George, obviously not all at the same time, but like in the playoffs, to being what they are now, which is on the verge in my mind of being back in the playoffs. It's really fascinating. So, but this would be a great class.
We could go for an hour.
This would be a great webinar to sit there. But I think we have a pick. It is.
Yeah, it's the conservatively dressed Grady Dick
out of
Kansas, heading up to Toronto. Just real quick, Dan Purcell, your thoughts on Grady Dick as a player?
I'm a pretty big fan of his. I like his game. I like, obviously, that he can stretch the floor. I actually think he can grow his game, especially on second side of the offense, a lot more. But good pick. It's kind of this pick right here. It's not even about Grady Dick for me. It's about Cam Whitmore and how much he's starting to fall. You could consider this a free fall for Cam Whitmore. So the medical that's out must be pretty devastating, because he's now lost $26 million. I think something along those lines. It's close to 28 million, something like that right now.
I don't want to run the numbers.
Yeah, that is just me. That is just me off the top of my head. I didn't look it up, but as it's happening in real time, my brain is hitting it with a lot of lost money. But Grady Dick, I'm a big fan. I think he's a good fit, especially if they are going to keep Pascal and Scotty Barnes and that whole group together. I think he's a great compliment.
And what do you think of the fit that he is wearing right now?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's what I wear every day.
Where is Toronto as a franchise, Eric?
Well, Toronto's at sort of a pivot point where they need to either stay with Pascal Siakam and OG Anunoby or not. And if it's not, it means trade them before they hit free agency. And Pascal, it's time. They have another year, obviously. OG has an extra option where he could stay longer. I do believe there's a connection with Masai Ujiri that it goes beyond basketball. That goes into what he represents as, you asked me a minute ago, like, who's a top GM? You could obviously, he's not even the GM. He's got the higher position. That's Bobby Webster. But basketball executives, he's among the best. And so, but they are probably losing Fred VanVleet to free agency. There's been some buzz he might go to Houston. We'll have to wait and see on that. And then also Gary Trent Jr. just opted in. So they just have a lot of decisions to make, and they need shooting. So getting shooting, makes sense.
It's a good fit.
Yeah.
Gabriel Mendez is our scout that covered Grady Dick, and this is the first time I'll offer up any analysis, and hopefully the last. I saw a little Chris Middleton in his game. What did you see with Grady Dick, Gabriel?
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Got it. So Grady Dick, As far as the Chris Middleton comparison goes, I see it a little bit. They're both a bit slower paced, bigger guards. I say Grady Dick is more so of a wing than a guard, but he can put the ball on the floor a little bit. He can play make a little bit, as you can see here. He's more of a guy that's going to be able to play off of other stars, right? Be able to attack closeouts and find the open man, as you can see here, dumping it off to his teammate Jalen Wilson. But I think the name of the game with Grady Dick and his bread and butter is really the 3-point shooting, to be specific. I think he might be the best spot-up 3-point shooter in this class. At 6'8", has a nice high release, so not a lot of people are going to be able to reach or meet him when he's releasing the shot and contest it or block that shot. Has a very quick has a quick release, quick trigger shot, and I think he's going to be a guy for Toronto that, as mentioned before, is just going to be able to come in and space the floor. I think that's really one of their biggest needs, especially when you consider Scotty Barnes isn't a great shooter, Pascal Siakam isn't a great shooter, OG Anunoby hasn't necessarily taken that step as a ball handler and as a self-creator, right? So I think Grady Dick is a guy that you can put on the floor and help simplify things and just provide space for your main creators. I think he's a guy who can run a little bit of who you can run a little bit of actions with your main guys. So I put him in pick and pop situations, since Scotty Barnes and Pascal Siakam both handle the ball a little bit. And again, he's a guy that you're going to be able to use in a multitude of ways, but I think his bread and butter is really going to be as a spot up shooter. Defensively, I think his game really more so profiles to be an off-ball defender. He's not necessarily the quickest of players. His foot speed is a bit slower. He's not going to be a guy that you put on the opponent's best ball handler, right? So his value is really going to come from his shooting and his ability to be that tertiary playmaker, just be a very solid supporting piece on the offensive side of the floor.
Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it. And Eric, and then there were two. It's you and I. Oh, look who's come screaming back in here. There's Dan Purcell. Quick thoughts on, I suppose this is the last pick of the lottery, the New Orleans Pelicans. Boy, they've got a lot of decisions to make.
Sure. I think that they were looking for a Jackson Hayes replacement in Dereck Lively, but that is off the board, and that's how the draft works. You know what I mean? Yeah. So you have an idea of how it's going to go, and you try to trade up because someone's trying to leapfrog you on the guy you want. So I'm curious to see. Now, the Pelicans have some issues long term. They can't necessarily keep this core together in 2 years. Something has to give. It's probably CJ first.
Okay.
And then but there's been all this buzz about they're trying to get Scoot Henderson and they're trying to trade off Brandon Ingram or Zion Williamson. I don't believe that to be true. I know there is a lot of intel about New Orleans reaching out, but I will say that they have a lot to offer beyond those players because, number one, they have picks. They have the Lakers. They have some Bucks picks. They have young players that are well regarded. And so if they wanted to make a deal and go all in, they could do like a 4 or 5 pick package or some players. I don't know if it's going to be enough to get a Scoot Henderson or the like. But I do think that they're in a very flexible position.
Eric, do you know anybody that lives in New Orleans that might have some thoughts on this?
Eric hit on a couple of those. You don't. From everything that I've heard, it's more or less there's no reason to trade Zion. You don't have to right now. Like there's not a reason to, right? Lowest value he has. He still has years on his contract. There's not really a reason to do that. They are going to pick. Looks like Jordan Hawkins, which is a great fit for them, by the way. Great fit for them. If you can't get Scoot in this case, I tweeted out earlier that I thought if there's a place Scoot is going to go, it's going to be New Orleans. And sometimes doing nothing and trusting what you've done is better.
The trade you don't make.
Yeah, than trying to force your hand or overdo it or like you said, make the trade that you don't have to make. So I think, Jordan Hawkins fits again, this fits their mold of how they draft. They draft guys who have multiple skills or they have a very, very elite skill and they're, long and they're ready to. I think this team healthy is a title contender. I'll just be honest with you. The way they are, this is a title contending team if they're healthy. Yeah, 100%.
Well, so absolutely healthy. So you're talking Zion Williamson.
Zion plays 65 games. They're a title contender.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
It's certainly a deep play. I mean, certainly first round easy, not playing is what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. And then it's a question of are they able to close out series and does it work? Because then they haven't gone through the trenches of a playoff run, but then we had some teams, advance far pretty quickly. So I'm excited for their flexibility. Like there is a clock, and I think CJ at some point, but I think your main point is like, just because there is a clock, which there's a clock on all of us, unfortunately, you don't have to act until you need to act. And I hear all this, people on radio shows, TV shows are asking me like, Zion this, and I'm like, I just don't, that's not the intel. I don't think that's what's happening. And so we could all be wrong. We could get home from our show and find out that Zion's a Pelican or a Blazer,
If there's a trade that blows him away, maybe, but,
If you view him as a top 10, 15 player, if you're the Pelicans.
If he's healthy.
And if you view him as that, what is the trade that is better than a top?
At the end of the day, the fact of the matter is this team healthy was the number one team in the West in, I think it was December, maybe early January. When this team is healthy, they are a contending team for a title. There's no doubt about it. They match up with every playoff team, maybe sans Denver, really, really well. They can throw multiple defenders at you. They are long, they are athletic, and they can shoot. Like this team, this team has everything. It just needs their best two players to stay healthy. That's it.
And maybe they can't, maybe they can. That's a question I suppose you ask yourself if you're in New Orleans right now. But a question I'm asking to myself is, who's covering Jordan Hawkins? And we've got our own Jordan on the scene. Jordan, tell us all about Jordan Hawkins. What are the New Orleans Pelicans getting here?
Yeah, Hawkins is one of my favorite players in the draft. He's just a great shooter. He took a huge leap from his freshman season. He only averaged 5 points to over 16 this past year. He emerged as the second leading scorer on the team. He's going to provide elite shooting from all over the floor. He moves around the floor well, off screens and beyond the arc to get open. He could also use timely cuts to find easy twos in the paint. His shots also aren't open threes. He earns them by being extremely hyperactive around the perimeter. He's also a better athlete than I think a lot of people realize. He knows how to curl off screens and make quick slashes to the paint. Of the 34 high major players who made at least 83s, Hawkins is only one of 8 to make at least 9 dunks. He's a pure shooting guard, okay rebounder, not a great passer, but he's going to move without the ball frequently, get open, and shoot from the perimeter with just a slither of room. Very quick release, doesn't need much room to get off the shot. Decent first step and can rise above players when they get in his face. But he's really, really good at passing and immediately relocating to find his shot. He was good when the brights were lightest. In the NCAA tournament, he shot 21 of 42 from 3, and he hit multiple threes in 31 of the 37 games this season. He still only shot 40% from the field, even though he shot 39% from 3. I think he gets his shot off so quickly that he often takes tough contested shots rather than passing to a teammate. He did have the second highest usage rate on the team, and it won't be that high at the next level, especially a team like New Orleans, who has 3 very good offensive players. So his efficiency should improve. He has decent height and length that can hold his own on defense, but he may struggle with some bigger wings and guards. He doesn't have the tightest handle, but he doesn't need to put the ball on the deck to be effective and score. Not really a shot creator, but a guy who can open lanes for his teammates with his outside shooting threat. He did average more turnovers than assists, and he averaged less than 1.5 turnovers per game. He's not really a selfish player, just not a passer. I don't think he'll ever need to be a playmaker to provide value. As long as he hits shots like he can, he's going to have a place in the NBA for many years to come.
To you at any level? Is it maybe just a small trade? Is it a bigger trade?
In terms of what?
If you're a player that's been on a successful team in college, or if you're a player that's been on a successful team going through, does that matter to you?
Yeah, I think so. I think winners win, right? That's the old adage, is winners win. And I think having winners around you, guys who've been through it, I think is extremely important. That's one of those things that you can't quantify that. You can't teach that. You have to go through it. And, you look at, like, people like Draymond, like, he's a playmaker, but he's been through the trenches. Like, he's like the greatest guy to have on your team because he's been through the trenches his whole life. Yeah. And he just keeps he's a winner, and he keeps winning and winning and winning. Like, it's that type of thing. I think that's very important.
Well, we're up to my hometown team, the Atlanta Hawks, their pick, and obviously a lot of different options in Atlanta right now. What are your thoughts on that franchise, the state of that franchise?
Well, so they went through a small regime change, right, where Landry Fields is now the guy, right?
Yep.
And so we don't, similar to Michael Winger in Washington, we don't have a track record. We don't have 10 drafts or 3 drafts or 1 draft. So I think the pick's coming up as we speak. And so I'll be able to answer a little bit further.
It's Kobe,
yeah.
It's Kobe Bufkin.
So we actually have this. So we're
there you go.
Yeah. What I like is Jet Howard was our one miss, but as far as order, but everybody else that we picked, and Cam Whitmore is the guy who's dropped. But we're pretty much on track with where things are going. This was the value, more or less the value at that spot. Like they picked who we thought they should pick. So, not to say that Landry and our scouts are on the same page, right? That's what that says.
Are you saying that they're listening to you guys?
Yeah, I don't know about that, but I mean, if they are, then I think they're in trouble. We posted this thing after arguing in the room before. But the main thing is that they have some financial decisions to make because they are heavily committed in the roster that they have. They're basically like
they don't want to be a heavy tax team, right?
Whether they do or don't, they're right into the tax. They have limited flexibility. They're basically paying for a team that needs to be a deep playoff team. And maybe they are. They made the playoffs. They didn't advance.
A couple of years ago, they made the conference finals.
So, and they're paying like they're a conference finals team.
Okay.
So I think they need to consolidate one or two more. John Collins. It's harder to say. DeJounte Murray needs to get paid soon, and they can't extend him they can, but not at the price that he probably wants.
Yep.
So then do you trade him before maybe losing him, or can they, trust that he will re-sign with them, and but then can they afford the team that they have? So, they have some decisions to make, and look, you can't solve that with number 15 in the draft, but you can take the best player available and go from there. And I think that's what they did just right now.
Well, friends, I ask you, on what other show in the world can you find Kobe being analyzed by Jordan? Jordan, what do you got on Kobe right now?
Yeah, I like Kobe Bufkin a lot. He's a very well-balanced game. He actually fits really well with both their guards. He has a good wingspan and standing reach. You'll see in the first few highlights, he knows how to make the right read, delivers accurate and on-time passes, and can identify mismatches. He knows how to read a defense, and he knows where his shooters are going to be. He could be inserted into almost any lineup and make an impact. He does so many things well. He's very versatile on both ends of the floor. He had significant improvements from his freshman season, and he improved greatly from 3, even though he still only shot 35.5%. However, in those final 12 games at Michigan, he did shoot over 45% from 3 and averaged over 17 points, 6 rebounds, and over 3 assists per game. He's not the fastest or most athletic guy, but his 12 dunks were the second most on the team. That being said, he is very crafty and can score from all 3 levels. He has a smooth left-handed release and a soft touch around the basket with pretty good body control. However, he doesn't always create ideal separation on his dribble drives, which can lead to difficult contested shots. He's capable of making them, but he could be more of an issue against more athletic NBA defenders. He's a really good combo guard who knows how to play off ball. He has good enough vision and a willing enough passer to be a primary ball handler or distributor. I probably prefer him as off-ball guard duties, especially with a team like Atlanta. Good overall efficiency. It doesn't really force the issue. He knows how to make the right play. The 1.9 assist to turnover ratio is something he could look to improve upon, but he does have above average court awareness, knows how to get open and find teammates. He's also a pretty pesky defender. He can occasionally gamble wrong, but he hustles back to make the play. His 2.1 block percentage actually ranked 10th of 267 Division I underclassmen guards. So he should become an above average defender with his instincts and aggressive play style. He can play too aggressively at times, as he did foul out 4 times, and Michigan was 1-3 in those games. But he's quick and long along the perimeter. He plays with good defensive mechanics, knows how to stay vertical, and slides his feet well. He may take some time to develop, just as he did at Michigan, but he did improve so significantly in 1 season. Not a huge glaring weakness to his game. He has to continue to show some improvement and maintain good efficiency. and work on his shot creation. But I like him a lot as an off-ball scorer, a secondary ball handler and distributor, especially with his team like Atlanta.
If you're thinking about the Atlanta Hawks and this is going to be an off-ball guard, if he's talking about him being a good defender, you need that with Trae Young on that team. Fair to say, Dan?
Absolutely. And then you also have to ask the question here. Is the DeJounte Murray experiment, is that coming to an end? Is that moving on? You touched on it, Eric. Like, so, what's the scenario here? Because now they have 3 guards that all have different types of skill sets, but there's not a lot of minutes to go along with these guys.
So, I can only say the intel that's been there probably from the combine, which is about a month ago, and then I've since had conversations. The message I'm getting from other teams who are talking to the Hawks is that they're trying to make the Trae thing work, and they believe that Capella offsets what Trae doesn't do defensively. So if those two can't go anywhere, then who else leaves? And since they have this money crunch, and since they're trying to make it work with Trae, then DeJounte is either out, or maybe they keep it together, because it's similar to your Zion point. You don't have to decide yet.
Right.
So
what about John Collins?
Well, so now Collins has 25-ish, 26-ish million a year, and they've called, and if there's no traction, because John Collins is a good basketball player.
He really is.
But he's probably like a $15 million year guy for what he produces.
Well, what he produces on the Hawks.
Right, for them. But in the eyes of other teams, it's a commitment that I don't know a lot of teams are willing to make. He does a bit of everything. Does he do anything at an elite level? Maybe, maybe not. We can debate that. But, DeAndre Hunter is a good defender and can score. I don't know if he's lived up to everything that they had hoped, but I think at times he has, too. I mean, he had a playoff game where he went nuts a couple years back, right? The closeout game. And so, he's a player who's probably more desirable.
Gotcha.
But at the same time, you don't want to give up the desirable guys.
The Hawks are in an interesting position. I mean, it's really push your foot on the gas or pull back a little bit.
I mentioned Kevin Porter Jr. To me, that's where he needs to go. And they need to cut him, and they need to compensate to get out of either John Collins or one of their other players.
Yeah, no, that makes sense to me. We're up to Utah again picking next, and Dan, we've talked about Utah and the situation there, maybe perhaps a little better than they thought they were going to be, and now adding a collection of players. So what are you thinking in this pick? Is this a place where Whitmore could pop back up again?
I just getting some more information, and Whitmore is going to be falling some more, it looks like. This is big. This is big for him. He was at 4 on a lot of boards coming into this. There was a lot of them that had 5 to 7 on him. This is big.
How far are we talking out of the first round?
I don't think out of the first. I'm starting to think in my head as I'm running through the picks at Brooklyn, as Brooklyn's back-to-back coming up. That might be a place. It's going to be just depending on where a medical team thinks they can handle this. But this is going to be Keyonte George at 16. But this Cam Whitmore thing is the headline right now. This is I'm not sure how everybody's not talking about this more, because this guy was a bona fide top 10 pick this entire process, and now he is falling, and it's falling hard. This is not just oh no, some teams don't like him or they don't like his attitude or something. This is big.
Well,
this is a big one.
I'm thinking in an extreme case. Think of a guy like Joel Embiid, who had some medical issues coming out of Kansas. He falls from what would have been 1, it probably would have been Andrew Wiggins number 1. He went to 3. I'm assuming that Cam's either has a greater problem, potentially, according to what these teams are seeing, or he's not Joel Embiid if he's healthy. He's not.
He's not that level of all-star excellence, but he has the potential to be like an all-star one day. Embiid, obviously 7 feet. He was and you obviously have seen what he's turned into. But remember, he was injured for a really long time. He really had to get mature and get himself to a place in his body in a place where it's consistent. But everything I'm hearing right now for this, and I feel bad for the kid, but he's fallen hard. And I mean, I'm looking at the first thing that comes to my mind here is Brooklyn. maybe this is a Miami guy. This could be a Miami thing where they see the talent, they see that they can work with it, and they don't have to rush it. It might be a Miami thing here. The Lakers, obviously, Eric will know more about the Lakers, but it's getting to the point where it's value. This is the point where the talent and the value start. You really start crunching it and saying, if I'm Brooklyn, I have back-to-back picks. I can take a shot with one, and I can go with the conservative pick, back-to-back. That's why I'm thinking maybe it's Brooklyn. But Houston, watch Houston at 20. Oh, hold on. Yeah, watch Houston. Watch Houston at 20. Houston was big on him. He's been training in Houston. He's Houston-based with his agency. Watch Houston at 20.
All right. Well, making his debut on the show now, over in our satellite newsroom here in Costa Mesa, Ron Gutterman. How you doing, Ron? We got Keyonte George time.
Yeah, Keyonte George. He's a high-volume scorer. Really crafty scorer, can score from all three phases, and it earned him all the honors in his freshman year at Baylor. He was an all Big 12 first team. He was Big 12 freshman of the year. He can score pretty much any way. He has a pretty solid mid-range game, but he likes to focus on the analytics areas. He shoots from the three-point range and he gets to the rim. So he's a really solid scorer. He's a crafty finisher at the rim. He's efficient from the free throw line. So this guy can really just bring a scoring punch to the Utah Jazz. He's a strong off-ball mover as well. He is just one of those guys that on the offensive end, he's going to make an immediate impact. He can be a little bit turnover heavy. He can stand to improve as a decision maker. But overall, the offensive punch that he's going to bring will translate immediately to the NBA level. On the defensive end, he doesn't have, elite athleticism. He probably is going to get beat off the dribble, trying to stay in front of quicker guards. But at the end of the day, what he brings offensively outweighs kind of the negative that maybe he has defensively. So he has a pull-up game. He has a step back. He has pretty much every trick in his bag on the offensive end. He is just one of those players that's going to bring an immediate punch.
We're now up to a team called the Los Angeles Lakers, and we're just lucky enough to have a friend of ours, Eric Pincus, in-house with us. Just tell us about the state of the franchise with the Lakers. I mean, I know they got to the conference finals. It was a pretty good year, but this franchise expects more.
Well, I mean, from where they were when they made the Russell Westbrook trade, and it did not go well. Mm-hmm. And so last year was a lost year. Then this year it looked like a lost year. They started with 2-10.
Yeah.
Right. So
trade deadline was nice.
They made a series of moves that really righted the ship, and I think it worked. It exceeded all expectations. Now it's a franchise that's expected to win. They're a title. If you have LeBron and you have AD and you won a title in 2020, you're expecting to win now. And they didn't, but at the same time, they got beat by the Nuggets, who beat everybody.
Yep.
So if you're the Lakers, you have barely anyone under contract other than LeBron, AD, a few other players. They have to sort of make decisions. Austin Reeves, they have to figure out what to do with that. He's probably coming back. You have Rui Hachimura probably coming back. D'Angelo Russell, while did not perform well against Denver, did help get them there. So you have to decide, is there a better, if you're not fully in with D'Lo, do you have a replacement? So these are the kind of questions. And in the meantime, they're at 17, and I know that trading back is an option if one of their guys isn't there. I know they like Dereck Lively. I'd heard they like Kobe Bufkin and Hawkins and some other players. I don't know if they're in a position to reach on a Whitmore. I don't know the extent of this injury. Maybe this is a place where they're like, okay, we're not relying on this player to play. We're trying to win now, and we're adding to our long-term talent base, maybe. Or maybe they look to trade back, or maybe they pick, and we'll have to wait and see.
In our chat room, Matthew asked, should the Lakers package this pick? Any thoughts on a move like that?
Well, I mean, it's kind of an abstract question, right? Should they package it for should they go get Davis Bertans from the Thunder now? No. Right?
I feel like I'm in midterm review right now.
Well, it's just, it's an abstract, and people ask me, any chance this? I'm like, well, sure, any chance is pretty broad. Yep. They're in a situation where they do have two contracts that are very movable, and they have decisions on those contracts. One is Malik Beasley, it's a team option. One is Mo Bamba, which is non-guaranteed. But both decisions are before July. They can push the Mo Bamba one down later. It might require guaranteeing some of it to get the agent to agree to that. But Beasley, by the nature of his contract, you can't push him. They have to decide by the end of the month. So if there's a team right now that has someone that they want to move and they want to get that pick, Lakers might be interested. But I don't think the Lakers go out of this draft with 0 picks unless you're giving them. They do have a pick at 40, I believe they traded into. But I think they want a first. It's a question of, do they go to Brooklyn, get like a Dorian Finney-Smith, a Royce O'Neal, and move back to 21 or 22. I don't know where Brooklyn is and if they're willing to do all that. But that might be the idea of where you end up. If, again,
to me,
what's available.
To me, the whole circumstance with this franchise is circling around the fact that LeBron's going to be 39 in the playoffs next year, and the time to go is now, as I understand it. Is that fair to say?
Sure, but I mean, is a 17 pick going to be playing playoff minutes now? But at the same time, LeBron talked about retiring at the end of the game, when they lost to Denver. So do you want to give up the 17 pick for LeBron and he retires after a year, or he goes and leaves and plays with his son, Bronny James, and now you don't have that pick. So the Lakers are need to be mindful of the future. And there's some buzz that the pick is in, and it's
Jalen Hood-Schifino.
Yes. So you wanna chime in, Dan? On
just on the Lakers. Just on the Lakers, there, it's they finally, in my opinion, they kind of gotten themselves out of the little rut that they were in, right? From a salary cap standpoint, it's that little rut. They couldn't really do anything to get their team to be that much better. In terms of the pick, I like the fit. I mean, Jalen Hood-Schifino is a good young player, and learning behind those guys and the way he plays defensively and offensively, I think it's actually a really good fit as the pick comes in here. Just want to double check that it's him, but I'm pretty sure it's Jalen.
From the little bit of film that I saw with him, he looked like a guard with a really strong base.
He does. He plays strong.
And I mean, to me, if you're going into the playoffs the first year, you come in with NBA strength with this guy, right?
100%. I think his base is good. I think it'll be interesting to see where he develops first. I think if it's in his playmaking, if it's in his shooting, if it's his shot creation, I'm really interested to see with LeBron, where does LeBron let him develop?
All right, well, we're going to let Gabriel develop the story a little bit more. Tell us about the kid from Indiana, Jalen Hood-Schifino, Gabriel.
Yeah, Jalen Hood-Schifino is a bit of a jack of all trades at that combo guard spot. He does a little bit of everything. I don't think he necessarily excels at anything on the offensive side of the floor, that is. For Indiana, he was their lead ball handler, had great synergy with their best player, big man Trace Jackson-Davis, was a very good pick-and-roll playmaker. Very patient, did a good job probing around after getting over that ball screen, waiting for opportunities to free up with regards to his teammates. As far as his scoring goes, he's a low volume finisher around the rim, but given that he is 6'6", 210 pounds, he's still a quality finisher, even if the volume was low this previous season. His bread and butter really, as far as scoring goes, was his mid-range ability, where he was able to get to his spots at will. Again, very patient pick and roll player that allowed him to pretty much do whatever he wanted, right? He was just able to get to his spots on the floor. I think turnovers is a bit of an issue for Jalen Hood-Schifino, as he did average about 2.8 turnovers per game for Indiana. So that's something to keep in mind with him. And again, his playmaking is very good, but I wouldn't necessarily consider him a lead ball handler at the next level. So the question with Hood-Schifino is going to be, what is the best part of his skill set? What is his role going to be necessarily at the next level, right? And then defensively, I think he's an excellent on-ball defender. Again, very physical, can guard multiple positions, can guard 1s, 2s, and some smaller 3s as well. I think for LA, that's probably going to be his calling card right away, is just that he's going to give you physical, tough defense, excellent footwork, quick feet as well. So he does a good job getting over ball screens and whatnot. So I think this is a guy that's going to come in for LA and give them a little bit of everything off the bench, right? And I think he could be also Austin Reeves insurance, right? He's a restricted free agent. We'll see what happens with him. We'll see what also happens in terms of that guard spot or the clutter of guards that LA does have over the course of the offseason. But I think Jalen Hood-Schifino does give them some insurance with this position. And again, he's a bit of a jack of all trades at everything. Excellent on-ball defender and a capable playmaker as well. But again, a bit of a jack of all trades, but just a solid two-way player for LA.
Much, Gabe. Just real quick, Eric, your thoughts on this?
Well, it doesn't sound like this is a trade. I don't know their board, obviously, but there was a handful of guys that were like, we're not going to trade down if we get these guys. But then, to the question from the chat, if they did want to trade down, it depends on who's trading down and for what. But you got a nice player here. Is he someone who can help as a rookie with LeBron to win a title? That remains to be seen. But also, you don't have that long-term security. So they sort of have to straddle both worlds, and I think they got a nice player for that. What do you think? I'm on target there as far as the future leaning, but not mortgaging it.
Yeah, I mean, mid first round, you're looking for a guy who can ultimately start for you, right? I mean, you're looking for or play a role. Is that Jordan Clarkson type role, or somebody along those lines? So you're looking for a mid first guy that can play a role, fill a role, and help your stars be better than they currently are.
Right. Well, Jordan Clarkson was a second-round pick.
Well, I was just
but
not pick, but
I'm saying
just as a
he
role.
Exceeded his.
Absolutely.
He exceeded his.
Absolutely.
His draft position.
Just in looking at the physicality of him as a player and some of the things he brings to the table, I thought a little bit of Desmond Bane off the top of my head. Maybe not that physical. Dan, you're shaking your head. No.
Sorry, Cam Whitmore. I just was looking.
You can see the pain.
I see that the other broadcast has finally started talking about him 14 picks after what he was projected.
I hate seeing a young player go through something like this. I hope he's the sort of guy that uses this as fuel. I know Draymond did. I know other players have. I hope he's that guy.
I mean, it's a tough pill to swallow. I haven't personally sat in that room, but in the green room, obviously. But that has to be extremely tough.
To talk about our mock, we are like 17 picks in, and we have 16 players selected, and the only one who isn't is Cam. So it hurts, But we're credit to our crew here. I want to just shout out to Aaron Perlstein, who is one of our scouts, who helped put a lot of the film together.
Why is Aaron not here right now?
Yeah, Aaron's not here because of the goal of what it is that we do here is to get people jobs, and so he's partnering with Ramon Sessions, former Laker for the Laker fans, Milwaukee Buck, great pro, was worked in the Players Union, and he's an agent, and he does represent Jordan Walsh, and so I know that. Aaron is, I think, I don't know his exact title, but it's fantastic.
Aaron does a great job.
Yeah, so
he really does. Congratulations, and that's across the board for. I think we have such a good hit rate when it comes to people getting jobs in basketball, and it's not just NBA front offices or NBA coaches. We get those too, but it's also G League, WNBA, media. Agent side. Like, there's so many opportunities. This is what I love about this program. Is just hear success story after success story after success story.
Yeah, our best reason for you not being here is you got a job and you can't show up. But we love hearing that.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Yeah, congratulations again to Aaron on landing a job. We were just in meetings with him the other day, and we hope to not have these folks back next year. We want all the.
Well, I mean, it's the stuff they're reeling off.
This is really good stuff, guys.
It's not just like, they're really athletic and they're they're tall and they can dunk. It's like
I feel seen here a little bit, Eric.
No, shoot, look, honestly, you could play any clips of any player and I'd be like, they look great, and they're like, no, that's not the guy. I don't know these players, so I'm 100% reliant on them for my intel.
But it shows again the amount of work these guys have put in, and I know we appreciate it. I know we're happy for you guys that you get this opportunity to showcase your talents, and you guys are doing a great job, and we're really, 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 really proud of you.
Absolutely, and build a resume, so that of work product. We
have Miami Heat. Look who a local kid, right? Tell us about him.
Well, I mean, I Jaquez, right?
Jaime Jaquez?
Jaquez. I want to make sure I say it right because I know I'm going to mess it up. I'm a UCLA guy. I went to UCLA. I'm a Bruin, so I'm always happy to see my Bruin. Now, Bruin guards. We got a good history. You got obviously Lonzo's hurt, but there's a lot of good guards that have come through UCLA to the NBA. So, but he was probably projected in early mocks to be 40-ish, and then gradually was
the workouts?
I mean, from what I heard, he murdered workouts.
Okay.
And just impressed. That's, you could watch film, you could watch whatever, but workouts do matter because you see the guy, you get to talk to them, you see their work ethic, how they communicate, how they listen, and then their actual presence, and then how much they've grown because a lot of these players haven't played since March or maybe April. What kind of work they've done on their own to improve, and everything I'd heard was that he was definitely a first round pick, and so we had him later. I'm trying to see. I check where we have him. We have him at 30. So this is another, and Miami. You got to respect Miami. I mean, I like what they do.
That's a good point because there was a period of time where if the Spurs picked somebody, you were like, oh, gosh,
absolutely.
The Spurs got this guy. Miami's getting to that point with players where you start to just believe that what they picked is a steal of a pick. Do you like the fit there in Miami with Jaquez there, James?
I just want to make sure. I went to Lake Erie College, so I'm going to say Jaime Jaquez. I just want to make sure. Shout out to Lake Erie College Storm. No, I actually love his versatility. He can do a lot of things, super high IQ. Something that Miami really does is they get high IQ guys, high character guys because they have a standard, right? And they live by that standard. And he's one of these guys, he's not going to come in overweight. He's not going to come in out of shape. He's not going to come in and, mess up drills and mess up games and, turn the ball over all the time. Like, he's a solid basketball player who understands how to play, and that's right up Miami's alley. Did I think he was going to go this early personally? No, I didn't know that the upside was there, but for a team like Miami, it makes perfect sense for where they're at, and they have needs, and he fills a need for them.
Officially, the pronunciation is Jaime Jaquez.
Sure.
And officially, we can go over to our satellite newsroom again and check in with Ron Gutterman. Ron, how are you, bud? We need to hear more about the UCLA product who's heading down to Miami.
Yeah, Jaime Jaquez. I mean, the Heat love winning players, and very few players have done more winning in the last few years at the college level than Jaime Jaquez. He's pretty much a veteran at this point. He's 22 years old, which is on the older side for these drafts. He's one of the most decorated college athletes of the last few years. And the reason why is because he has improved every single year. He is an extremely hard worker. He's a high IQ player, like Dan said. He is always going to make the right read. He's always going to make the right decision. He just has this innate feel for the game. He's an incredibly strong rebounder for his size. He averaged 8 rebounds a game as a senior for a wing. That's a really strong number. He can score in isolation in the mid-range. That's kind of where his bread and butter is offensively. He's not the most athletic player, but when you are as smart as he is, as strong as he is, and as just dedicated to the game as he is, you see that success. He gets steals. He forces offensive players to work. He doesn't foul. He makes life difficult for an opponent on the offensive and defensive end, and he does it without being this super athletic player. I think the Miami Heat are getting a perfect fit for their system. He's the exact type of guy that they love to have. And, whether or not 18 is a reach remains to be seen, but I do think he's going to fit seamlessly in their system.
Skill set, because you could argue that they have players of that skill set, but Eric, with where they are as a franchise now, maybe it's time to transition, or maybe there's some other moves in play. I know you're constantly looking at all the possibilities. What are your thoughts?
Well, the challenge with Miami is that they have to pay Hero now. Like, Hero is paid, but his extension starts now, and they're paying Kyle Lowry a significant salary. They're paying Bam. They're paying obviously Jimmy and Duncan Robinson, and so the contracts are adding up to the point where now with the new rules, they're paying like they're the championship team, but they're $250 million maybe. And the cap just went up a little bit, a couple of million. That might drop that number down. I haven't run the projection yet, but let's say it's 230 or I'm just making up a number, but I know it was 250 before the projection. So it probably dropped down, maybe save them 10, 20 million. But it's a decision time where something needs to give a little bit. And I don't know exactly what that looks like. I also heard Miami that if Dame did say, I'm out, that they would be making a run. Who knows? That's obviously a speculative thing. To get a cost-controlled guy who can do a bit of everything, that they load up on guys like Cody Martin, or which Martin? Did I get the right Martin?
I think you got the right one.
Martin is like the kind of guy who can just do a lot of different things and just help you win. And so you're getting that in the draft. I'm not sure where Miami goes because of their money, but they have to make a decision soon. So I like the pick, of course, as a Bruin.
Well, it's getting exciting now. The champs, not from last year, that's the Denver Nuggets, but the year before, the Golden State Warriors have made a pick, guys. And Golden State, just a fascinating franchise, just with where they are and what they're doing as a team. They go with a kid named Brandin, and I'm going to get this last name correct if it's the last thing I do. Brandin Podziemski. Brandin Podziemski. I've got the phonetic pronunciation right here. Brandin Podziemski from Santa Clara, so not far from here. And he goes to Golden State. I'm fascinated by the Golden State situation because they have one of the best players, this century, Steph Curry. He'll be turning, what is he going to be, 36 next year in the playoffs? They've got an older Klay Thompson, Draymond Green situation. Where are they as a franchise, Eric Pincus? Lots going on there.
Well, so they're getting Chris Paul, and they've moved out of the money for Jordan Poole. I don't know that Draymond Green's going to return, and I know that a lot of fans are waiting on that decision because he's been a cornerstone piece. But to pay him what the market will bear, and that's really the question, is a difficult one because of where they are. The new rules, the new CBA rules, are such that they're targeting teams like the Warriors and the Clippers who spend the way they spend. So I wouldn't be shocked if Draymond is with another team this next year, and it's early. We'll find out in a week or so. But this is really the key decision.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a wild situation if Draymond Green doesn't return. That's that core three that's been together. But at some point, maybe it's time to change.
I think it's that point. That's what my intel is telling me.
Yeah. Well, let's let Gabe talk to us a little bit about Brandon's game right now. Brandin Podziemski. Gabe, what are you seeing in the way he plays? What does he bring to the table for Golden State?
Yeah, I think Brandin possesses some of the best overall touch in this class. I think he's one of the more complete offensive players. A bit of an undersized two guard, right around 6'4"-ish, 200 pounds. But again, that touch, as you can see here, is just incredible. He has one of the highest arching shots in this class. And, just the touch, he has such a great form, nice high release on his shots, really allows him to get that shot up over bigger defenders. And I think his main role with Golden State is going to be as kind of like that Jordan Poole replacement, kind of like that combo guard that can play a little bit on ball, as you can see here, can make a little bit as well. A guy that's going to go and get his own shot, but also be, I think, a little bit more reliable as an off-ball scorer than Jordan Poole was potentially at the NBA level. But yeah, Brandin Podziemski is such an incredible mid-range finisher with that touch. He's a lefty dominant player, so he really relies on that left hand to get up shots over bigger defenders. I think he could struggle a little bit in terms of just the NBA being a little bit quicker, right? A bigger competition and whatnot. But I think with his touch, with his offensive repertoire, and with his shooting in general, I think he's going to have a decently long career at the NBA level with his offensive prowess. Defensively, you're not going to be getting much just because he's not the most athletic player. He doesn't necessarily have a position either, right? He's a guy that isn't quick enough to stay in front of a lot of lead guards, right? You don't want him guarding the opposing player's best ball handler. But again, he's not big enough to where he's going to be able to stay in front of, wing 6'7" and up guys, right? So the defensive end of the floor is really where Brandin is going to have to improve, right? That's probably going to be where his NBA career is made or broken, right? But on the offensive side of the floor, I mean, he's just such a complete player as a shooter and as a secondary ball handler, especially off the bench, which I expect that to be his role for Golden State moving forward.
So Golden State gets another shooter. During your explanation, Gabe, a mild celebration broke out at the other end of the desk here. Dan, what have you learned?
As I was saying in the previous segment there about Cam Whitmore and 20 to Houston, I thought first it was Brooklyn, and then looking at it a little more, that it would be Houston at 20, and in fact, it will be Cam Whitmore at Houston at 20. Make too much sense.
So the wait is over for Cam Whitmore, we believe. Houston has just over a minute left to go on the clock. Houston's building something to me. I'm just fascinated with. So if they get a player whose value was 4, and it turns out they can get him healthy, they've stolen something, right?
Best knee. I believe they have the best hospital for knee surgery and rehab there is. Listen, this is almost too good of a story from a Houston perspective, right? They were thinking about this at 4 before the knee, and now they get him at 20.
Think about this, Dan. A week ago, I tell you that they get Amin and Cam.
Unbelievable. I would say they've won the draft so far. Literally, it is such a big thing to be able to get value. Ask Denver, Michael Porter Jr., right? Back issues, everybody's running away from him, and Denver leans into him, and what happens? And you get that result. But if you don't try at some point, you're never going to get that home run swing. So for me, a lot of guys don't like Cam Whitmore's game that I've spoken with. They think he's probably ceiling's pretty low, and then with the knee, you're going to have more issue. But I think now that expectations have been tempered, and that we all know that he has a medical issue with the knee, that it's going to give him an opportunity to really push forward. If I'm him, I'm saying to myself, this is my opportunity. This is where I probably was supposed to go in the beginning, and I'm here now, and I'm going to make that second contract the easiest second contract for Houston to sign an offer ever. That in my head, that's the way I'm approaching it.
Yeah, I'm going to have to look it up. This is what you don't want to talk about, but the money, and I'd have to pull up the new numbers, but it's a big drop. So, you're talking about in the near 10 range, and I'm not going to give exact numbers, to the 3-ish range in starting salary in your first year. But again, Michael Porter Jr. is on a massive contract.
Yeah.
And sometimes opportunity comes in different ways. And
absolutely.
He's going to go to a team where he will get a chance to play.
Yes.
And display.
And if he misses the whole year, so what? If he can get himself healthy, and right now there's a lot of duplication at positions. The Rockets have a lot to figure out.
Let things
about
kind of
the
work
roster.
themselves out, you're saying. Let them work themselves
Let
out.
him put in the time to build up his body, learn the game, because he's going to go through the NBA routine as far as, he's going to be a redshirt. And, well, I don't know. I'm not saying he's going to miss the whole year. But if he did.
That's to be determined.
Right. If he did, then you're redshirting the year, and there you go. So
what a great moment for him. You can just see the relief wash over Cam Whitmore as he gets picked. And
from just sorry to interrupt you, Beau, but from a team standpoint, did Houston if Cam Whitmore turns out to be a core player for them, maybe he's not the superstar. He's the core. He's a part of that core, right? Starter, key, reserve.
He could be a superstar.
He could.
He's a top 5 pick legitimately.
But at 20 now, with this salary and the expectations, if he's a core player, you've hit a home run. And even if he's a starter, key, reserve, you still hit a double out of a guy that, obviously the knee issue is going to be a thing, but a guy who has shown that he has a talent to the upside, and he needs to learn how to play more. He needs to learn how to get off of it. But when he's in small spaces, you see the explosion, you see the athleticism, and I'm telling you, this guy, if he can get himself healthy, as your guys are watching some film on it. I don't know if we're watching it in our stream here, but he is a
I mean, he's a physical load.
He's a guy who is athletic. He can play defensively, offensively. That sure didn't look like that move right there was hurt by the knee. But I'm telling you, there's this inflection point in the draft where value and risk come like this, and this is that point. It makes sense from a Houston standpoint. They liked him at 4 before the knee, or if they knew before, they were on him the entire time, the entire process. They were with him. They met with him. From everybody I've spoken with, they met with him earlier this week. They've told him they liked him. They told him that he was a guy that they were aiming for, and I think be able to get Thompson and Whitmore out of this draft, I think is that's a very big thing. This ceiling for Thompson, like I said, is extremely high, but it's also extremely low. So you took a shot with that 4 pick, and now you're coming back at 20 with a value pick. I think it's a really good maneuvering. And heck, at 20, Cam Whitmore to me that's a great pick at 20.
Elias, you thought you'd be on the show much earlier talking about Cam. Why don't you just break down what the Houston Rockets are getting, particularly the film you looked at when he's healthy?
Yeah, again, we don't know what the deal is with the if there's an injury or whatever, but at face value, what Houston is stealing, I want to say, in this draft is the Big East Freshman of the Year from Villanova. Cam Whitmore's IQ on both ends of the floor is very high. Again, as a cutter, he knows when to pick his spots and when to find those lanes and when to go. If he gets that ball when he's running and getting momentum to the rim, it's almost impossible to stop him. And in Houston, they pretty much have a dunk contest on their team now with Thompson and Green. And Cam Whitmore's going to fit in there perfectly with Amen Thompson's playmaking. And Amen Thompson's so used to finding cutters with his brother, where I think that's going to be a great combination that we're going to see in the future. The shot creation is a bit of a question. Right here, he can do it at times. There's times where if he gets stuck and has to pull up, it's not usually going to work out. But off the catch, he's a great catch and shooter. He looks very comfortable in that role, especially from deep. And again, defensively, he's very smart. He knows when to switch. He knows when to help. He's very disciplined with himself. And the numbers don't show it, only 0.7 assists per game. But what Cam Whitmore can bring is unselfishness. He knows when to shoot, when not to shoot. He knows when to move the ball. And you see a great cut right there. Cam Whitmore also only 18 years old. He turns 19 next month. He's 6'7", 232 already. And he is going to come to Houston and be a very explosive athlete that can fit into any offensive lineup and work his magic off cuts.
His best scenario comp, in your opinion?
Best scenario comp, a guy like Miles Bridges, the way he plays basketball. I think he mimics that really well. I think actually what LaMelo Miles Bridges had in Charlotte, that can be kind of replicated with Amen Thompson and Cam, where he's just kind of letting the ball come to him as a cutter and throwing down dunks on anybody that gets in his way.
Hey, Elias, just because I recognize the accent for a second, how do you spell the word center in your part of the words?
In what context? It's too
Yeah, we had to work because I edit what they do, and he had utilize with the Canadians. Yes, and which is cool. Neither's wrong, neither's right, but but no. Thank you, Elias, for putting this together. And
he does look like he's
Canada basketball is. I mean, there's how many? You have a champion in Jalen. You have.
Last year they had a champion with Wiggins.
Shea is Wiggins too. So back-to-back champions plus Shea All NBA. So Canada well represented. I know they love their hoops up there.
I just like that Elias looks like he's coming to us on that Obi-Wan Kenobi cam there. So I do appreciate that touch, Elias. There he is. Yeah, say hey to your friends back on Earth, Elias. That's good to see there. So we're up to the Brooklyn Nets. You talked about them earlier, Dan. They're picking at 21 and 22. This is a franchise undergoing a lot of change right now.
Yeah, I think one of the best things they got going for them right now is they have back-to-back firsts, right? So usually a theory that I like in these scenarios, especially late in the first, you can take one shot and then you can take more of a conservative on the next one, right? Or vice versa,
so
however you want to do it.
And then a Dan move.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So it'll be interesting to see where they go. I don't have exactly where they're going right now, but from a team needs standpoint, I think they just kind of need everything. They need guard play. They need playmakers. I mean, they have Bridges, who's a phenomenal. He'll be an all-star for the next 7 years. It's just a matter of what can we get around him, because right now they have a lot of wings. That's a good thing. You can play really different types of defenses. You can give different looks offensively. You can mix skill sets and whatnot. So I'm interested to see where they go here. I would think I'm going to butcher this name, and I'm sorry, but the kid from Ignite, City.
Sisosko? You tell me.
I'm not the name guy.
I'm messing it up. I'm
not the name guy.
Here, we got the
first name again.
City
Sissoko.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly.
It's SID. There it is. CD.
And then I'd also maybe somebody like Noah Clowney.
Sissoko.
Maybe somebody like maybe Gigi Jackson. They could take a shot on Gigi Jackson here. So maybe if they, I'm just throwing some. Maybe it's Dariq Whitehead is more of a guy, but maybe it's Noah Clowney and Dariq Whitehead, or Noah Clowney and Leonard Miller. It'll be someone with, somewhere along those lines. Maybe not two bigs. Maybe
Bryce Sensabaugh.
Bryce Sensabaugh is a good name.
Rupert, those are the guys that we met.
As we watch this,
there's some late injury things on Sensabaugh happening as well. That's developing in my world.
Okay, so that's why he's
who is this? Did we look?
I'm trying to read the lips.
There you go, Noah Clowney.
Okay,
there you go. Yep, that makes sense.
So what's nice is the only play. There's no one who's at this point dropping. Like we're caught up now that Cam's finally off. Nick Smith, Leonard Miller, Gigi Jackson are guys that we had drafted in the last few picks that were 18, 19, 20. And at this point in the draft, I'm just happy that we're still really we're still in. I don't know what that was, but we're still in the in the same ballpark. So go ahead.
Stay in the franchise, Brooklyn, real quick before we jump to the scouting.
So the Nets have an expensive tax bill because they are a repeat tax offender, because they've been paying for the likes of Kyrie Irving, James Harden, and Kevin Durant. So any tax that they pay is additional. So they can keep Cam Johnson and the group that they have together. More realistically, someone is going to go. I don't know who that might be. It might be Dorian Finney-Smith. It might be Royce O'Neal. It might be Joe Harris. I think there's a cut that needs to be made via trade somewhere, and I think these players might be
they might be included in that.
Yeah. So we'll have to wait and see how this goes. I know that Brooklyn is one of the teams I expect to make a trade, not necessarily today, but in the next week or two, to sort of get their budget where it needs to be.
Yeah, or if they do have something already kind of in the mix, they may be picking for someone else at one of these picks right here.
So lots of speculation. Let's take a look at the player. Let's fire up R2-D2 and bring Obi-Wan Kenobi back. Elias, what are you seeing on Noah Clowney?
Yeah, I think Noah Clowney, he's one of my favorite prospects in this draft. Kind of like what Dan said, that Brooklyn needs everything. You're getting a bit of everything with Noah Clowney. Very versatile defender. He can switch. He can help, and he's very, very aggressive. Sometimes to his detriment on defense, but on offense, the aggressiveness helps him a lot. He puts a lot of heart and hustle into his game. So offensively, he gets to the rim really easily, and he's really long. He gets around his defenders, and he once his eyes are on the basket, he knows that's where he's going. He takes contact like a champ. He doesn't shy away from it, and he had shot almost 5 free throws per game last season at Alabama, which was one of the best in their conference. And yeah, I think his skills and abilities got a little bit overshadowed by Brandon Miller being his teammate. But what Noah Clowney can do is that he takes a lot of tough shots at the rim, but he actually shot 67% from 2-point range last season, and most of those were at the rim. And on top of that, he's shown flashes of a great 3-point shooter. A very smooth jump shot. And again, only 18 years old, so he's a lot of room for growth. He's still pretty raw offensively while he does attack the basket, and while he does show flashes of 3-point shooting, he only shot 28% from 3 last season. On a lot of open attempts as well. So that's something that's going to have to develop. But what Brooklyn's getting here is they are getting a very versatile defender and willing offensive player and confident offensive player to join their lineup. He's a bigger player, 6'10", which is a need, specific need that Brooklyn needed to fill, where they only have Nick Claxton and Day'Ron Sharpe. They haven't seen much from Day'Ron Sharpe yet, but to be their backup 4 or 5 going forward right away, I think he's going to help them out a lot, and he's going to be a great young piece to build with.
Dan, I'm curious, if you're Brooklyn now, or you're just acquiring pieces, like strategic pieces, it just seems like they had so much recently, and now they don't have so much, and they need to sort of restock the cupboard.
Yeah, and it's interesting you said that. I was trying to think of the projection line from a macro standpoint, right, with Brooklyn. I mean, they have these good players, and they have one really good player. So you could say that they have a core guy in Bridges, and if you could maybe say that Cam's a core guy, I would probably put him as starter key reserve. And so you have a bunch of starter key reserves, and then you have this guy. And the Atlanta Hawks proved that you can't win that way, right? So it's not the Atlanta Hawks of this year, but I'm talking the Joe Johnsons,
Sure.
that those teams, they don't win championships, and they can maybe on a good year get to the conference finals, right? So the trajectory of this team is we need to find a way to get an elite top 20 player at some point, right? Because like I said, you have Mikal Bridges, who arguably could be that top 20, but you're going to need a second. The league tells us you need a second. So it's very interesting to see where they go. I agree with Eric that I think Finney Smith is going to be the guy that ultimately moves. It could be Cam Johnson if he brings more value in, but I think Finney Smith is the one that's probably going to net you the most without giving the most away, if that makes any sense.
Well, Cam's a restricted free agent, so then the question is,
it's a re-sign.
What's the right price for him? What's the right price? They gave up, obviously, KD, and they got Bridges. But Cam was a vital part of that.
Sure.
So if you're not keeping him, what are you getting back in a sign and trade? And generally speaking, I get a lot of fans who say, like, oh, yeah, we'll just sign and trade. We're going to lose this player, we'll sign and trade him. That happens. But it happens a lot more with restricted free agents than it does unrestricted. And we are going to have some sign and trades for unrestricted free agents this summer. But Cam is maybe more likely if they don't want to keep him. But the intel is that he's staying. And so if they're going to keep Cam, and if they're going to keep Bridges, and if there's no suitor for Ben Simmons right now based on his contract relative to production, they're better off just dealing, if there's no solution, then try to up his value and find a way to get him. Well, now it's like, okay, who is more expendable? And, they need Spencer Dinwiddie unless they get a replacement because they are very light at guard. Joe Harris is about $20 million-ish, and Dorian is about 14, and Royce is about 10. Now, not all of Royce is guaranteed, but you're not going to trade for Royce to cut him. You're trading because he's a good player. So I think of those 3 players, that's where the cut's probably going to come. And I would say of value in order, probably Finney Smith has top based on price, O'Neal, and then Harris is the best shooter of the bunch, theoretically, but he has had some injury issues, and he's also the most expensive. So it's a matter of what's right in the market.
And just to go back to Beau, I remember I was saying Dariq Whitehead was a good name, and there he goes off the board here at 22 to Brooklyn. So you're taking a shot, and then you're taking a guy, and that's kind of the way that they took it here.
So who's the shot and who's the guy? Dariq is Whitehead?
Clowney will be the shot, in my opinion.
Okay, and Whitehead's more of a
conservative, in my opinion.
Okay, gotcha.
So there it is. It is official now. It's Dariq Whitehead going with pick number 22 to the Brooklyn Nets, former Duke product, and since he's a Duke product, I'm just going to go ahead and move on to Ron Gutterman hanging out nearby, not in the studio, but nearby. Ron, what are your thoughts on Whitehead?
Yeah, Dariq Whitehead hit 42.9% of his threes in his lone season at Duke. So he is a pure sharpshooter. He can score off the dribble, catch and shoot threes. He's a tough shot maker. His offensive profile is really one of the best sort of in this section of the draft. He is a wing on the offensive and defensive end. So when you're looking at Brooklyn and you're looking at their roster, you're seeing a lot of wings. He just kind of adds to that mix. Dan has talked about you can never have too many guards. I'm of the belief you can never have too many wings. So I think Dariq Whitehead is a pretty good fit here. He had a foot injury that kind of limited him. He was the number one high school prospect at some point in 2021. And then a foot injury kind of hindered what he did best, which was kind of his athleticism, his ability on ball to get steals and kind of keep defenders in front. He didn't have that quite as much at Duke because of the injury. So if he can kind of get healthy and get back to that, you're going to see a really, really solid player that can kind of defend well. He's a great team defender. And then he'll be able to score from all phases. So the one big issue I would say is kind of a high turnover rate. It was a 16% turnover rate. But overall, I think Brooklyn is getting a really solid 3-and-D wing here. And if he can get healthy, he has some athletic pop to him as well.
You can never have too many wings. I just want to make sure. You can't have ever too many guards and too many wings.
I thought you were talking about dinner there for a second, but never mind. Yeah, so I think that's interesting, the way that this draft is sort of playing out. And again, thanks to Ron and thanks to all of our scouts. I think it's a great time now to talk about Sports Business Classroom and the program that we have here. You see all the work that our scouts are doing and you know, the talent and the professionalism they have. Again, we've got so many new programs that are coming out. That's what we're really excited about, all these new programs that are coming your way. But before we dive into that, let's take a look at our program and perhaps hear from Mr. Coonigan as well.
Are you ready to jumpstart your career in the business of basketball? Then Sports Business Classroom is the choice for you. Immersed and in person at the NBA's Las Vegas Summer League, Sports Business Classroom provides an accelerated experience in the business of sports. Learn from the experts on topics like the salary cap, scouting, and analytics, as well as media and broadcasting. Head over to sportsbusinessclassroom.com to sign up. That's sportsbusinessclassroom.com.
That's a familiar voice, Mark Jones.
Legend.
Nicely done, yeah, nicely done. Mark Jones is a big part of our program.
One of the nicest guys, too.
Yeah, just a fantastic guy. And honestly works with our students in the media and broadcasting program. So I personally really appreciate what he brings to the table and the dedication and the commitment he has to Sports Business Classroom. Guys, we're getting later in the first round. 23, Portland's up now. We know what Portland did earlier in the draft. Any thoughts on where they may be going at 23, what they're looking at, sort of tacking on after picking up Scoot?
Yeah, I would think they're going for a role player here. I mean, somebody that is a specialty, somebody with a specialty, meaning whether that's shooting, whether that's playmaking, whatever that is, rebounding. I would get, if Sensabaugh's injury is probably dropping down, I'm guessing Chris Murray. Nick Smith is also a good prospect in terms of if he can get himself right again with injuries, he can move forward. Also, Ryan Rupert. Is it Ryan or Ryan? Like I said,
Ryan
I'm not.
Rupert.
There you go. I'm from Burton, Ohio. I don't know that we've ever used a French accent in Burton, Ohio. But it may be somebody like that along those lines.
What about Leonard Miller for them?
I don't think so. I don't think Leonard, with Nurkic there and the bigs that they ultimately will want to play with Dame, I don't think they have the time for Leonard Miller to.
They need somebody.
Develop it. They need if they're going to get a big, he needs to be plug and play right now. I don't think Leonard Miller is that.
Because they can't go guard.
They're probably going wing here. My thought would be wing. I haven't seen it yet, but I'm guessing wing. There you go, Chris Murray. There you go. The wing shooter. There you are.
Yeah, we toyed with
a specialty guy who has good size and you can plug and play right away.
Yeah, we toyed with Murray moving up into the first round. We didn't get there in the end, but. Yeah, that's going to be.
Well, just so everybody knows, if you're not following closely, this is Keegan's little brother, if I'm not mistaken,
correct.
But a very different player, right? Just a
different. Me? Oh, I'm sorry. No, I mean, yes, in terms of size, in terms of. I guess body type a little bit, but I don't know that at the NBA level it's going to be that much different. Yes, they're different players. There's always going to be, little tendencies that are different and whatnot. I don't know from a macro standpoint, though, that it's going to be that much different. He does everything his brother does, just not as well, and he's not as big. You know what I mean? And
yeah, sure.
You know what? If he's a lesser version of his brother at 23 is really good because his brother had one of the best shooting or maybe the best three-point shooting season of a rookie in all time. So if you're going to give me a lesser version of that, that's still a pretty good NBA player, in my opinion.
Well, Chris Murray was originally assigned to one of our students who got a job, Aaron Perlstein. So now raise your hand if you've jumped into the Chris Murray market here as a scout. Do we see anybody? Is anybody jumping to that?
Wait,
is that Max, there
we
you
haven't
are.
heard from Max in a while.
How you doing, Max?
Max put a monopoly on the first, 10 first 40 minutes of the draft and then just took a break.
Yeah, Max took a nap here in the first round. Welcome back, Max. How are you doing? What do you know about Mr. Murray?
Good. Got some coffee ready to go. But yeah, Chris Murray, took a big jump this season at Iowa after his brother Keegan left, doubled his production points-wise, averaged about 8 rebounds and 2 assists. Usage obviously went up big time. So with that, his efficiency did take a little bit of a dive. That probably will be fixed, though, at the next level because he's not going to be one of your primary guys. So being more of an off-the-ball threat, 3-point shooter, that 33% he shot this year at Iowa probably could increase just because of the fact that he's not going to be expected to do so much in getting his looks this year at the next level. Good hands on the catch, though. Also a great rebounder on the offensive glass. Uses his frame, could probably put a little bit more weight on to get some more strength in there and box out and finding a body when he's going towards the glass. But runs the floor very well. Good finisher in transition and does look for his teammates if he's taking the ball and moving it as well. Decent assist numbers, about 2 a game. Probably, again, asked to be doing a little bit less in Portland this year, so has some more flexibility there. But improvements need to be made a little bit defensively on his end. That's something that can probably be easily corrected. Big difference with Keegan and Chris, though, southpaw. So whereas Keegan was a righty, Chris coming in shooting lefty, and 6'11" wingspan though as well. So probably just a good plug and play guy out on the perimeter. Be able to be ready to contribute, in a third, fourth option type of look, potentially.
How much do I need to care about his fit with Scoot Henderson now?
We got to talk here. Let me jump on this. And Dan, you're the one who just pointed out to me, but apparently, according to Adrian Wojnarowski, he is going to, this is number 24, right, is going to Dallas.
This is Olivier. Again, saying the names is
okay. So
Olivier-Maxence Prosper got drafted by Sacramento at 24, getting moved to Dallas into that traded player exception they just created, I believe.
And they're taking Richaun Holmes.
And they're taking Richaun Holmes back. And Richaun Holmes they've been trying to get off Richaun Holmes for this entire time. So congratulations to them for getting off of it.
So if you're Dallas and you needed defensive bigs, you now have Holmes and you have Lively, and that's where their money's going. But this actually is interesting on the Sacramento side. That's fascinating to me because on the Kings side, they're in a position where they had some cap room, but we're probably going to stay over the cap. Now, they may go under the cap because they don't have to keep Harrison Barnes. And if they don't keep Harrison Barnes and you pull off Richaun Holmes from their money and just pop him off entirely because he's going away, and I guess they would pull off the 24 too because they're not drafting 24. Now we're talking about $35 million in cap space.
I figured something out.
Yeah.
What we need here. Have you ever seen election coverage where they have the big map and they're
yes.
I need you with this.
Yes, I've done that before. I've done that on NBA TV.
Sure.
It's less. It's difficult to sell it to the audience and do that because usually the technology is not 100% where you want it to be. But it's all in here, and it's in here. So they've got $35 million. So now you have different ways. They could go, if Kyle Kuzma, if they want to, I mean, the Kings need to improve defensively, but at the same time, maybe double down on what you do well.
They're close, though, right? Sacramento's close to really, really competing, right?
Absolutely. But here's another thing that they can do with this kind of cap room. Pay Domantas Sabonis like the Indiana Pacers did this last summer or last season. You gave him what's called a renegotiation and extend. You bump him up his salary for this season so that the extension can be 140%, which is the new rule. And so he can be maxed out for next season, which is the opposite kind of what Indiana maxed him out last season and paying him less moving forward. In the case of Sabonis, pay him a lot, not all the way to the max, but pay him some of that cap room so that because right now they can extend him, but not at market value. If he's a max guy, then they can reno him, extend him at a certain number, and still go shopping at find a small forward or a power forward.
Let me get into some general talk here real quick. If a guy is in their 20s and they are a multiple-time All-Star, is that a max guy? Is that enough?
Number one, we have a new economy, so we don't know for sure yet what that economy is going to look like.
Okay.
But generally speaking, if you're taking your team to the playoffs for the first time in my youngest daughter's lifetime, being that she's now a junior in high school, and they did not make the playoffs her entire life until this past season, then you're like, yeah, Fox, he's a max guy, right?
Yep.
Sabonis is the partner.
That's your core. Yeah.
Right. And so you say, well, maybe they should work to improve and spend all that money to improve. Maybe. But you do all that, and if Sabonis happens to leave because you can't extend him at market value, maybe this is a move I don't know what their thinking is. I'm just saying this opened up that door. Getting out of Rashawn Holmes changes their position a little bit. If they're going to pay Harrison Barnes to stay, and if he's 15-20 million and they have 35 million, they still have money to play with. Or if it's not Harrison Barnes and it's a replacement, then you're doing something different. So fascinating to see. We actually have to get into the player who was picked.
Yeah, I think we need to talk about Olivier-Maxence Prosper.
Which is a really good player, by the way. We're talking about all this other stuff, but this dude's a really good player.
And he's going to Dallas.
Yeah, Gabe, hop on real quick and let us know a little bit about Olivier.
Yeah, I absolutely love this pick, this fit in Dallas for Prosper. I think he kind of fills that void that was left by a player like Dorian Finney-Smith in that Kyrie Irving trade this previous season, where Prosper is a play finisher on the offensive side of the floor. He's only 6'7", but he's really a bigger forward. I think he's going to translate as a power forward, fill in that 4 spot at the NBA level. But he's a vertical athlete, right? He's an above the rim finisher. He's a guy who you can throw it up around the rim. You can throw the ball up around the rim, and he's going to go get it and put it down. And he's also taken strides as a 3-point shooter this previous season. The percentages didn't necessarily change from this previous season to the last season, but the mechanics were much more fluid, and the attempts rose to about right around 100 attempts per game last season for Marquette. So this is a guy that is going to be able to play off of Luka and Kyrie, right? He's a guy who you can use as a pick and roll threat, right? He's a guy who can roll to the rim and finish around the rim. Or if you want to use him as a pick and pop threat, or you want to use him as a spot up shooter, right? He gives you that versatility to use him. And then on the defensive side of the floor, he's able to use that height to be a pest on ball. Marquette often put him on the opposing team's best ball handler and pretty much had him picking them up as soon as they crossed half court. And the one thing with Prosper is that he's not necessarily the best off-ball defender. He left some to be desired. He wasn't necessarily a turnover machine, right? Doesn't do a great job utilizing his size and athleticism around the rim or as a rim or in passing lanes either, right? But this is a guy that you feel comfortable putting him on ball on an opposing team's best player and doing his thing. And then on the offensive side of the ball, on the offensive side of the ball, he's going to be a guy who can play off of your best players in a multitude of ways.
Dan, just taking a look at this, I'm seeing a little bit, and correct me if I'm wrong, Pascal Siakam sort of player. Is that way off?
I don't know that he's going to get to Pascal All-Star level, but I do love the player. I think he plays his butt off, and when you play your tail off like that, man, a lot of good things can happen, right? Not only that, he's physical. He doesn't mind contact. He has holes in his game that he's going to have to fill. But I spoke with one NBA source and told me that they think he is going to be an all-star one day. He has potential to be an all-star one day. And that is like a steal, obviously, this late. He's one of those guys where 5 years from now we may be looking at him and going, how did he get picked 25th? Was it 25th ultimately? Yep. How did he get picked 25th ultimately? And, especially if he helps that Dallas team get to the playoffs with his hustle, and he doesn't need the ball all the time, and he will use backdoor cuts and slot cuts and things like that. And I think it's a really good fit for Dallas. I really am impressed with what Nico and the team over there are doing. This is really good stuff. They're in a tough spot. It's not like this is an easy spot for Denver with all the money they have out and, the positions they need filled and whatnot. But this is a very good draft for them. They've really done a good job of trying to get something now to help Luka.
Well, and just to clarify, Olivier went with the 24th pick. Memphis on the clock now at 25, about to make their selection.
Kind of.
Well, no, yeah, this is getting moved, I think.
Yes,
Okay.
There's some buzz here.
So give us the perspective from the other end of the table. What's going on here?
On which one?
On
This is
pick that
Memphis
is getting
pick.
moved.
So Marcus Sasser is getting drafted. He's getting traded to Detroit. I don't know the whole package yet,
Okay,
though.
so Boston is moving back. They moved up, and now they're moving back. They're moving back to 31. And so I think I have an idea of where the target is going to be, possibly Jordan Walsh. He might not get past Denver at 29. We'll have to wait and see. But I think Boston's been a little busy last few days.
Yep.
And so for whatever reason, 31, maybe they would rather be in the second
And
round.
2 future seconds.
Okay, 2 future seconds as well.
Is that because of the nature of the contract? It's not guaranteed? Or?
Well, it's complicated, and they have a new exception called the second round exception, and it's basically putting in a structure for second round picks that's advantageous. It arguably makes the negotiation easier. It's a question of how much is guaranteed, but there's a specific structure that
Sort of like the salaries in the first round, but for a second round pick?
yes, but it's 3 or 4 years with a team option on the last year. The player can get a little bit more in the first year, or if it's a 4-year deal, they can get a little bit more in the first and second. It's still minimum, but you're kind of getting instead of a rookie minimum, you're getting like you've been in the league for an extra year. So there's just little incentives. And so I think there's a demand for these seconds where the teams that value getting players for like a 3 or 4 year deal at basically the minimum, but a little bit higher in the first year, will be it's a way to go. And for a team like Boston that is locked in with if they keep Porzingis and they have to pay Jaylen Brown, et cetera, maybe moving back is the way to go. And of course, if you're targeting a player like Marcus Sasser, if you're Detroit, getting him where their money isn't the same thing. They're not a heavy spender. Maybe getting him, and there's not a huge difference, but there's enough of a difference that I could see why a team like Detroit would want a guy on a rookie scale contract, and why Boston would want a guy on
That makes sense.
this new exception.
Jordan, I'm sure you're waiting to share a little information on Marcus Sasser. What are we looking at in terms of the player he is?
Yeah, Sasser's a really good guard. He's only listed at 6'1" and $190, but he plays bigger than his size, solid rebounder, and above average defender. He was one of only 27 Division I players to make at least 93s and shoot above 38% from three. He was also in the top third of all high major players in turnover percentage and assist-to-turnover ratio. He can score and play make off the dribble, can score from all 3 levels, and possesses a nice floater in the paint to shoot over defenders. Despite his shorter height, he knows how to get to his spots, maintain decent efficiency, and draw contact. His free throw rate of about 35% ranked 5th of all the players to make at least 93s. It's a high basketball IQ. He can spot up on catch-and-shoot opportunities, get open without the ball, and make plays off the dribble. He's capable of taking on primary handle responsibilities, and he's able to score from pretty much anywhere on the court. His offense fits the mold of a versatile guard off the bench who can provide lead ball handler duties while not being a defensive liability. He's an efficient scorer. He does tend to bring the ball down on his three-point shot, and with a smaller frame for a scoring point guard or 2 guard, many NBA defenders will be able to contest and quicken up his release or alter the shot. He can score effectively, attack the basket, and create plays for his teammates. He's a much improved playmaker. His 3.1 assists per game this past season were a career high. He had a really good steal percentage, ranked in the top 10% of all of over 500 high major players. We actually only had Cason Wallace and Anthony Black in our mock draft that had a better steal percentage. He can defend and force turnovers without fouling. He only committed 2 fouls per 40 minutes. And he has good strength and plays a physical brand of defense. His 6'7" wingspan makes up for the lack of height. I think he's one of the better defensive guards in the draft. He's an NBA-ready prospect who can make an impact off the bench right away with his defense and shooting. He played more of the two guard in college, so his maybe role a bit limited until he will prove his defense will hinder his production. Teams may take advantage of an undersized backcourt with him at the two, but his quickness, shooting, and physicality defensively should limit that. He has the skill set, actually, I think, to become one of the premier guards in this draft class. He provides good defensive pressure, and his long wingspan will earn him minutes to play alongside any defensively challenged teammates. I think as the season progresses, you'll see him establish a more concrete role. He's a bit of a tweener right now, but he could become a productive secondary ball handler. As long as he continues to improve his release and continue his efficient outside shooting, he should be a good guard off the bench.
All right, thanks so much, Jordan. We're moving in on pick number 26 with the Indiana Pacers, and just wanted to remind you again, if you're enjoying what our former students, now scouts, have to say and want to get involved in Sports Business Classroom, there's a multitude of ways to do it. We've got Larry Kuhn's CBA Mastery Program that is available to you. So go on sportsbusinessclassroom.com if you want to see the CBA Mastery Program. We've got a full selection of podcasts. There's a look at Larry Kuhn's CBA Mastery Program. It's a video on demand course that Larry himself put together. He's got all the CBA key terms. And again, it's sportsbusinessclassroom.com is where you want to go to check out all this stuff. The one thing I keep stressing is we've got more programs coming. This is a big one, the Larry Kuhn CBA Mastery, but there are more coming, so stay tuned. And we're staying tuned with the draft right now. Ben Sheppard is the pick for the Indiana Pacers out of Belmont. Ben last season averaged nearly 19 points a game. We'll jump over to our scouts and let them tackle the issue with Ben Sheppard. That's Max Rosenberg. Max, you're up again, buddy.
I knew you wanted this one, Max. I know you wanted Ben Sheppard. I was throwing it to you.
Yeah, of course. Another Bruin to throw out there for even though it's on the other coast. But Ben Sheppard, big-time mid-major guy, pure shooter, moves well both with and without the ball, running off screens, running off handoffs, does a lot of damage in the mid-range as well. Really your prototypical size you're looking for in a guard. Maybe went a little bit high here, but really came together in the combine, was showing out each and every game he was participating in, really an infectious type of attitude. The kid is always smiling. He's ready. He wants to be at this next level and be a great pro. And a lot of his preparation beforehand leads to his success, led to that success at the combine. And, his shooting stroke really is something that's going to give him the ability to be productive at the next level here with the Pacers.
Well, yeah, Ben Sheppard's an interesting pick there. He says maybe a little bit early, Dan. We're up to Charlotte now, 27. They're getting set to pick. Obviously, they picked Miller at the number 2 pick. Any ideas what they may be looking at? Obviously, they've got a lot of positions to fill.
Yeah, I mean, right now you need to – if it's me, I'm taking a shot on somebody here, whether that's G.G. Jackson, Nick Smith, someone along those lines that's fallen a little bit but has some good potential. I would probably go, if it's me, or Sensabaugh, if Sensabaugh's injuries are, it depends on what the injury is on it, but Nick Smith was also injured as well. So I would probably say, if I'm Charlotte, I need to get a double here probably. So I'd go G.G. Jackson or Nick Smith.
G.G. Jackson was a guy who was one of the top prospects in his high school class, originally committed to North Carolina, switched up to South Carolina, and honestly, his season there wasn't what he thought it was going to be. The picks coming in now, but it'll be interesting to see what Charlotte does with that, because Gigi's a local kid. There's Nick Smith out of Arkansas, and we see again, waiting to the last moments of that first round, Nick Smith overcome with emotion as he hears his name picked or announced by the commissioner. And with Nick Smith, that means we turn it back over to Elias, who's jumping in with some analysis on the game of Nick Smith, the guard out of Arkansas.
Yeah, so with Nick Smith, first and foremost, we're talking about the number 3 recruit out of high school. He had a bit of a wishy-washy season with Arkansas, and I think part of that is due to his injuries that he experienced. And he joined a very offensively I guess, high offensive prowess team with Arkansas, where if he wasn't playing consistently, he was going to have a hard time finding his spot in their in the way they play. So he had to match up with guys like Anthony Black and Ricky Council, who are elite offensive players at the college level. So he had a tough time, getting a rhythm there as he was in and out of the lineup. But what Nick Smith can do is he can get his own shot. Reminds me a lot of guys like Emmanuel Quickly and Bones Highland, where at times they look out of control, but really they seem like they can still get the job done. So what Nick Smith does is that when he gets the ball, he has great prowess or high prowess at getting the shots that he wants. The make and miss part was a little tough this season. Again, I think part of it is that he couldn't find his rhythm, but with the injuries. But what Nick Smith can do is that he can knock down those shots when he does get the rhythm going. He's a heat check player, microwave player, can be an elite 6-man for a team. On catch and shoot threes, he shot 50% on uncontested. So the shot making is there. It's just a matter of making sure that he picks the right shots to take. He was a little wishy-washy with that at Arkansas. And again, I'm kind of personally giving him some more leeway with those shots due to, again, his injuries. He only played 17 games for the Razorbacks this year. And defensively, the effort is there. The size is a little tough for the defensive end, as he's 6'5", only 185 pounds. He will have to build some muscle to get some more versatility there, as right now he can only really guard 1s and 2s. But he wants to get the stop, whether he can do it or not. The effort is there, and he's going to bring a high motor to the bench of Charlotte. And he could be a great scorer off the bench for them.
Dan, did he land about where you thought he would? Because just looking at him, he seemed overwhelmed with emotion, like he was sitting in that green room longer than he thought he might have.
Personally, no. I don't think that if he didn't have the injury, then yeah, he's probably 18 to Miami or 19, or maybe it's a Brooklyn back-to-back. So I was saying that earlier, one of the back-to-backs with them. I think it's a good pick for Charlotte. Again, this late in the first round, you're trying to get a double, right? I mean, obviously, if you can get a home run, you're happy. Sure. But you're trying to be educated and get a double out of these guys, because as you get to even with the new CBA rules on the second round, in this current CBA we're in, the second round was like the Wild West. It was just based upon precedent, right? And you could give guaranteed. It's a little bit more Wild West than it will be in this next one. So these end of the first round picks to me are like super valuable in terms of team control with the 2 guaranteed years and then the 2 option years. Like it's such a good place to get good talent that you can really take a shot on. So like he has a knee injury. Well, we can take a year because we have 4 years of control on it. And after year 2, if it doesn't work, boom. It just didn't work out. No harm, no foul on the team end. Now, obviously, from a player end, it's different, but the team-wise, it's pretty good. And then I think on this one, if I'm Utah, I'm going Sensabaugh. I think he makes too much sense.
That's what the reports are.
What?
Sensabaugh.
Oh, they're taking him? It
makes sense.
Oh.
It makes sense.
It makes too much sense. I didn't even know. Yes. I just saw Utah up here. It makes sense. Sensabaugh, even if with the injuries, it makes too much sense, his ability. He's arguably the best scorer, like best pure scorer in this draft. So if you can get him this late, I think Utah, they're just stacking talent. They're trying to stack talent, just seeing who fits and who doesn't. Not all of these picks are going to fit. Some of these picks may not even be on the opening day roster, but you know what? They're taking talent and they're putting it out there and saying, we're going to try to get as much talent as we can. And a guy who can score like Bryce Sensabaugh is – you don't find him every day, and if he can overcome some of that the injuries they're reporting, then this could be a big steal right here.
Can you trust Ohio guys, Dan, though?
Yeah.
Every day, with everything.
So good on the Utah Jazz. They go with Bryce Sensabaugh at number 28. That means there's just 2 first-round picks left after Bryce, but right now we're going to jump into the story on Bryce Sensabaugh. Obviously averaged just over 16 points a game last year for the Buckeyes, and just give us a little breakdown on his game, Jordan.
Yeah, as Dan just said, I think he's one of the best bucket getters in the draft. Beau, you talked about Desmond Bane earlier. I think this guy's could be a Desmond Bane 2.0.
Okay.
I think he's a top 20 talent. I thought he might slide. He had a season-ending surgery against Iowa late in the season in the Big Ten tournament. But he's built like a linebacker, a tight end from Ohio State. There's actually only 28 players in the NBA right now that are listed below 6'7" and above 225 pounds. Really good scorer. Something worth mentioning, since 2008, just 18 one-and-dones have posted a box plus minus above 7. He and Brandon Miller joined that group this year. He averaged the most points per game per 40 minutes among high major freshmen and over 26 points per game. He was immediately effective for Ohio State. He appears to be very comfortable as an offensive player. Really quick first step off his jab moves. Does a great job of using his body to create space for a shot. He'll often lean in and be able to pull up comfortably. Really physical on offense and knows how to create angles to get to his spots. Very good shooter, one of the best in the draft, and can pull up off the dribble. Actually have him as the 3rd best shooter in the draft behind Hawkins and Dick. Really good downhill speed on his drives and good sprinting speed on rim runs. He's a decent handle and create his own shot. Like I said, possesses a good step back and a fadeaway from the low post. Really comfortable off the bench as well. He came off the bench in 12 of 33 games and led Ohio State in scoring, despite being 5th in minutes per game. He's a pure scorer, very efficient. He shot above 50% in 18 of 33 games and made multiple threes in 21 of the 33 games. He's not a great playmaker, but coming off the bench, he was asked to mostly score. Defense and rebounding. He's an underrated rebounder. His defensive rebounding percentage actually runs 5th of 70 high major freshmen who played at least 40% of their minutes. Better defensive rebounding percentage than Jarace Walker, Dereck Lively, and Brandon Miller. Really good offensive rebounder as well. Defense will be where he needs to make the most improvements. He lacks some ideal lateral speed for a wing. He could be a bit of a tweener, a bit slow for guards and too short for some forwards. But he has the strength to compete in the post on both ends, and he runs the floor really well. His size will prevent him from being back down the post, and he has the strength to fight through screens. But like I said, he does lack some ideal lateral quickness along the perimeter. At the floor, I actually think he's a Grant Williams that's a better shot creator. So I think this is a very good pick.
Yeah, especially sort of a late first-round pick, getting somebody like that, Dan. That seems like a value.
Yeah, 100%. If it wasn't for the injury, I think he'd be going – he would have probably gone late lottery, in my opinion, if not, right outside late lottery.
Where does he fit in Utah now with all the young talent that they're collecting?
Well, Utah is waiting to find out player options for Talen Horton-Tucker and Jordan Clarkson. So it's not a given that they're back, but it's also not under the control of Utah if they're back. Now, of course, if they come back and Utah could trade them, but as far as having that money on the books and positionally, you don't necessarily know what you have. Plus, they have Rudy Gay, who is not going to opt out. I think he may have already opted in. And I don't think it's official yet, but he's going to opt into his 6.5. And they have Kelly Olynyk, who's not fully guaranteed, but they're going to keep that money. He's been very helpful for them. Their main guys, obviously, Lauri Markkanen, Walker Kessler, those guys aren't going anywhere.
Sure.
I think there's, they have Sexton. They have so much flexibility. They have picks, ton of picks, mostly from Minnesota. And then they have, cap room. So, I could debate and argue who has more flexibility between them and Houston, or if you want to bring in, OKC, who has the most picks. They're in that conversation with, pivot points and whatever. They could do whatever they want.
It's a good spot to be in, though, right? That level of flexibility.
Yeah, and this is not a free agent market. There's certain markets that Miami is a beach city, LA is LA.
Yeah, sure.
Golden State doesn't have any money, but it's Golden State. Utah doesn't have the same attraction for a free agent. They got to build a different way. That's not a good or bad thing. And obviously, Utah's been a fantastic franchise over the course of their existence. So they've gotten it done. This is how they get it done. But we do have a pick, and I got to brag about this one a little bit because we got it wrong, but we also got it right. Because
technically we got it right.
Well, no, we had Julian Strawther to Denver. We just had him at 32, and he went at 29. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm going to pat our – yeah, that's a win for our guys. We're doing quite well. I haven't figured out our how to rate us as far as pick accuracy, but if you go by within 2 or 3, we're pretty darn good. If you say this guy, we had him at 16 or 12, and he didn't go 12 or 16 or whatever, but he went right there. I feel like we've done a heck of a job. Absolutely. Yes, sir.
So we're at the last pick of the first round, and we're sitting just looking back at some of the names. You still have Leonard Miller, G.G. Jackson, Max Lewis. Max Lewis came into this thinking he was a first-round pick. G.G. Jackson came into this thinking he was. Trace Jackson Davis was told he was a first-round pick. We're starting to see some guys start to fall a little bit, and you can tell they kind of got the false sense of security, because if you look at the teams that are picking, it's the same teams over and over. Too many of these teams have traded away their picks, and now they're sitting here. The Clippers are a rare sight in the land of draft picks right now. And, to have them here, I would probably, if it's me at LA and I'm not trading Paul George and I'm not trading Kawhi, obviously, then I'm going for best player available. So it just depends on who they think is the best player available. I mean, they do need big help, so maybe it is getting a development big, but, it could be someone maybe at the guard spots.
The LA Clippers are on the clock now, but Jordan Silbert, you're also on the clock. Tell us about Julian.
Sorry, Jordan, I jumped the gun on you.
Yeah, Dan's stealing your time.
No worries.
Stealing your time, Jordan. Come on.
No worries. Yeah, I mean, you know what you're getting with Strawther. He's going to space the floor, move out the ball around the perimeter, and rebound at a pretty high level. He does a good job of squaring up before his release, and it's helped him improve as a really good shooter. He has true NBA range and can shoot well off ghost screens and fast break opportunities by squaring up and elevating efficiently. He's a really good catch and shoot shooter, 62 for 142 on the season, about 44%. He has good size for the wing position. He's actually listed as a guard for Gonzaga, but I definitely like him much more at the small forward position with his good size, strength, and shooting. He did average more turnovers than assists. He's not really a playmaker. His career high in assists per game came this past season. It was 1.3. And his assist percentage ranked 354th of 393 players who attempted at least 153s. So really he's more of a spot-up shooter. He does offer decent versatility on both ends of the floor. I think down the line, he could maybe play some small ball four in some select lineups against some select teams and maybe to defend it. As he steps in today, he'll be best suited guarding wings or bigger, more powerful guards. Good off-ball scorer. His usage percentage of 20.6, ranked in the bottom half of all players who attempted 153s. So he's not going to be the focal point of an offense, but he is a threat to score from deep, and he'll open up lanes and post up opportunities for teammates. His three-point shot and free throw percentage have improved each season. He shot over 40% from three this past season, and 77% from the line. Was below 70% from the line as a freshman. Really good catch and shoot scorer. Relatively low release point, but high elevation and a quick enough release and very good range. So I don't think he'll ever have an issue getting a shot off. He does lack an elite first step. He has an effective quick release floater in the paint. Occasionally a spotty shot selection, and he's not a great shot creator. He does have average athleticism and could get beaten by quicker guards along the perimeter. So he's better at using his size and strength down low to prevent post-ups. Could defend well without fouling, only 2 fouls in about 31 minutes per game. And like I said, he's a really good rebounder. His rebound percentage of 19.6, ranked 19th of 393 players who attempted at least 153s. His offensive rebounding percentage also ranked in the top third. Should continue to become an effective shooter off the bench, but he may need to improve his defense and maintain good shooting and rebounding numbers. Shots won't come as easy in the NBA as they do for him at Gonzaga, so he has to maintain decent shot selection and be careful not to force the issue and stay ready when he's called upon.
Great stuff, Jordan. Just as a reminder to those of you watching along, our show will end after the first round. So the LA Clippers, the last pick in the first round, and all of our scouts lined up to see who gets to break down the last pick. Guys, what's the situation in LA, first of all, with you, Eric?
Well, they traded the pick to, what was it, the Celtics or was it the Wizards? No, but then the Brogdon deal fell apart. So that's just some context.
Yep.
The Clippers are in a position where they need to pay Kawhi and Paul George on an extension or wait for free agency after the season, or the extension would happen this season. And so do you stay connected to what has been underperforming group, mostly because of injury?
I was going to say, it's sort of like New Orleans with all the injuries, but older.
Yes, yeah. Like, you have time if you're New Orleans.
Sure.
It's time because you've already paid everyone, and it's just a question, for the most part, in New Orleans. The Clippers have to decide now or soon to now. And so that, there's been some rumors that maybe Paul George might go to Portland or something like that. I have no idea where they're going to go as far as the conclusion. I do know that they have one of the most expensive rosters in the league and are about to pick up a another Kobe B.
I was going to say
the third
Kobe
the
coming
third
to LA.
Kobe B
That's
in
good
LA.
Vibes. That's good vibes.
Well, Kobe Bufkin didn't make it to LA. He's going to Atlanta. I know that had he lasted, he would have ended up in LA. But Kobe Brown is on his way to the Clippers. So hopefully I'll get to know him in LA in the locker room.
I'd like to congratulate Ron Gutterman on getting the last pick of the first round. Ron, you're up with some analysis on a Kobe that's headed to LA. What do you got? Uh-oh.
We don't hear you.
Oh, no, Mike. Can we hear Ron?
I think he's just
There you
muted.
go.
There you go. Yeah, Kobe Brown, a bit of a surprise pick here. He was projected to go in the mid-second round, but clearly the Clippers believe in what was a massive boost in production between his junior and senior year at Missouri. In his junior year, he shot 20.6% from three, and that number skyrocketed to 45.5% on increased volume in his senior campaign. So he made a huge leap on the offensive end. Now, teams were, probably deciding whether or not that was an outlier season, but clearly the Clippers believe that it was not an outlier. On the defensive end, he also is a very versatile player. He can guard 2 through 4. He's vocally active. He guards the pick and roll well. So he definitely fits that mold that kind of the Clippers like, which is if the shooting holds, that 45.5% holds, a really solid 3-and-D. He's a bigger wing. He's 6'7", 240. He kind of reminds me a little bit of a David Roddy, who's in Memphis right now. So that's kind of the archetype that I would put him in. He's a bigger guy. He can get to the rim. And if that shooting holds up, then he can be a really solid prospect.
All right, thanks so much, Ron. Guys, we're through the first round.
Yes,
sir. We're done with it, fellas. We made it home. I just want to.
Do we have to go?
I could stay here and talk all night. So let's see. Just generally thoughts from you guys on the first round. I don't want to get into the cheap winners losers sort of thing. So Dan, who are your cheap winners losers?
I'll tell you the winners and losers. The best part is coming back to it, right?
Give me what you like.
And also, before you don't leave out who's still left who didn't get picked in the first.
So I'm looking at City again. Can't say his name. City Cisco, Leonard Miller, Gigi Jackson,
Ryan Rupert.
What's that? Ryan Rupert, right? Exactly. Also, you have names like Oscar Tshiebwe. Guys like that, and then there's going to be like cult guys like Drew Timme and those guys that are still available. But I think you're going to see Gigi Jackson go off the board. I think he goes to Minnesota. Minnesota just traded for 33, so I'm thinking if Gigi is there, that's who they're going for. That's just me analyzing it, but I've been pretty good tonight on the analyst part. So I think that somebody like Gigi Jackson, or maybe it's Leonard Miller in Minnesota, maybe it's that, but I think somebody like Gigi was probably going very soon, if not 33, to Minnesota. Overall, if I'm going cheap winners, I love cheap winners. I think Houston had I was coming into this not thinking they're gonna have an opportunity, but this is what the draft does. It gives you opportunities, and they took this opportunity. They got, and again, I'm not head over shoulders for Cam Whitmore at 4. I'm not head over shoulders for Cam Whitmore at 8 or 12, but I am at 20. At 20, that give me. I mean, you saw our scouts, the talent that he has. I think it's great. I think they had a really good draft. I actually think the Jazz had a really solid draft with the guys they took. I mean, not all of them will stick, not all of them will stay, but it's a good talent group that they went from. I love New Orleans' pick. I think Jordan Hawkins could be Ray Allen. Like that's the type of shooter he could be. I think that's an amazing pick for them. For how they draft and what they've drafted, New Orleans has, in my opinion, been top 3 the last 3 years in terms of who they draft and how they develop them. It's really been really good to see on that.
What about Dallas? What do you think about Dallas?
I was about to say the next team I'm thinking about is Dallas here. They really did a lot with nothing, and when you can create almost nothing into something on draft night, that's a win. And, they had to take on a little bit of salary, obviously, with Holmes and whatnot. But I think from a talent perspective, they really tried to get a little younger and fill roles that go around Luka. And you can do those things when you have young superstars. You can find other young guys that can grow with them over a couple years. So I would say, I really like Houston. I really like what Dallas did. I like what Utah did. Well, I think they did a solid job as well. And don't forget Indiana. I think Indiana did a good job. They said they walked into this thing saying, if Jarris Walker is there at 7, we're going to take him. And then on top of it, they traded down one spot and still got the guy that that they wanted. And I honestly, I think they would have taken Bilal as well. If just say Jarris Walker went to Detroit at 5, I think they would have just taken Bilal. So it was a win-win for them. They picked up some more assets along the way. I think it's a good draft for them.
Eric, as far as team building and teams trying to meet their goals and go in the direction that they were hoping to go in, is there anybody that stood out tonight on that mission for you?
Well, so in terms of NBA players who were moved, we had basically the Kings and the Mavs, right? Was anyone else moved?
If you count the earlier trades.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
but from
draft
tonight,
day,
from the first round.
We've had a lot of. You always have. It's the busiest day of the year in terms of trade, but a lot of them are just picks moving up and down. Yeah. But what we have is we have Dallas, who went and traded what was probably dead money for them. I mean, Bertans did some things for them, and they're upgrading for them in terms of fit, in that they're getting a guy who should be or could be a better defensive presence in Richaun Holmes. The only difference financially is that Holmes' second year is a full player option, which is fully guaranteed, whereas in the case of Bertans, only a small portion. So they're potentially taking on a little bit more money the next year, assuming Holmes opts in. And so it's not financially significant. We talked briefly maybe by getting out of Bertans, maybe they go and go shopping and don't keep Kyrie, but it sounds like they've just sort of moved pieces around. On the Sacramento side, they're in a position now where either they could pay Harrison Barnes and pay Sabonis, which I think is something to consider, or maybe Harrison Barnes is going somewhere else and they're using that money to go shopping. And I don't know where they would shop, and we'd have to sit down and look at who's going where. But it's interesting. And I think Sacramento, for instance, let's say that the Blazers do decide to go in a different direction with Dame, and maybe they don't bring Jeremy Grant. Maybe that's a player they go after, or because that helps defensively. Or if they want to add scoring, Kuzma, he could be available. Maybe the Wizards are going in a different direction because of everything that, regime change. So there's a lot to look at. I'll have to run through it because there's a lot of changes.
I know you will.
But it's I love draft night. It's always a joy.
You know what's been a real pleasure tonight?
Yes, sir.
The work of these scouts. I want to just thank really the expertise of Jordan. Thank you for coming on the show. Thank you, Elias. Thank you, Gabe. Thank you, Max. And where is Ron? Has Ron run away? Thanks to all you guys.
And don't forget Aaron as well.
Yes, Aaron. One more shout out is Mikhail Ratz. I don't know if I'm saying it. He's in Moscow. He's our international scout. He did a couple. His players did not get picked in the first round, but
one of them just got picked.
Yeah, I really do.
James Nagy.
Seriously impressed by what everybody did. Thanks to all the crew here in Costa Mesa helping us out.
This was fun, man.
No. Sports Business Classroom really is growing, but you see what we produce. We're producing experts. Again, there's going to be new programs that are coming up. Our main core is the Summer League program in Las Vegas, but there is more growing out of this. The interest, and I'm not joking when I say this, I'm being dead serious. The interest blows our mind. We're selling out quicker than we ever could have imagined. So if you want to jump in now, and there's going to be different ways to jump in. Go to sportsbusinessclassroom.com. That's your hub for everything. And if you want to talk to folks like this all the time, come to Sports Business Classroom. Dan, Eric, thank you so much for jumping in. And again, thanks to our scouts. It's been a heck of a ride.
Oh, yeah. And the job of steering this ship.
You did an amazing job.
Yeah. I wouldn't want to be in your seat doing what you do because I would not do it nearly as eloquently and gracefully as you do.
Me and my friend Coffee got it done again tonight.
And a big shout out, let's not forget Albert Hall, who's been amazing through this, and Sergio and shout out to Max and Bing and everybody included back here.
Do we want to shout out Bing?
Bing, wave Bing in the background.
Sam.
Wave, yeah, there you go.
Sam, and I don't know your name, but you've been doing a great job on camera.
But this whole thing is, at the end of the day, to give our alumni and our students a platform that they otherwise wouldn't have, and that's the biggest thing. And you guys impressed this whole time, and extremely well done for everyone.
Right, and the thing is we can only set the ball up on a tee.
Yep.
It's up to you to take the swing, and all of our students that I communicate with, a lot of them have contributed, but the ones who were like dedicated and consistent are the folks who represented us and represented well today. So appreciate all the work they did. We spent countless hours. We didn't realize what a project it would turn out to be as far as how much work. But man, we knocked it out, and I couldn't be prouder.
That's right. Again, sportsbusinessclassroom.com is your website. The students are why we do this. But now our job is done, so good night. Thanks for watching, everybody. We appreciate you jumping on this Sports Business Classroom NBA Draft Watch Party. Thanks for watching.
If you persevere long enough, if you do the right things long enough, the right things will happen. I'm Dave DeFore, the Department Chair for Scouting, Video, and Analytics at Sports Business Classroom. At SBC, we teach both the art and the science of scouting, providing unprecedented access and opportunities to hone your craft side by side with league personnel. Do the right thing for your career by visiting sportsbusinessclassroom.com today.